Welcome to Galactic Earth Fusion Mission Upgrade, the show that discusses the normal, the paranormal, the natural, the supernatural, the organic to know the inorganic, the weird, the wonderful. All things outrageous, strange, upbeat, and cutting edge. Broadcasting to you live back from WNC, Western North Carolina, land of the sky. I'm Missy Hill, and today I have with me Rabbi Rothschild. Rabbi Rothschild, this is going to be a special show, you guys, okay? Because he has so much information, but he is an Orthodox, I would call him a mystic, Kabbalist, interested in UFOs, UAPs, alien abduction, the scientific method and things behind this, as well as the experiences and SSP. And there's just too many things to say about him. So with that, I am going to let him introduce himself. Hi, Rabbi. How are you today?
I'm well, thank God. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you, Missy, and to be with your audience. You're absolutely right. I am Rabbi Michael Moshe Rothschild. I'm an Orthodox rabbi. I'm additionally a certified project management professional. I've successfully launched apps on the App Store and Google Play. Moreover, I'm a futurist. My work focuses on the intersection of spirituality, technology, and humanity's long term future. I've been an active participant in both modern Orthodox and Hasidic Jewish communities, including Chabad, for many years, while exploring how the principles of postmodern Orthodox Judaism may help bridge traditional Jewish thought with contemporary technological, social, and global challenges. I became an Orthodox Jewish rabbi in 2021, a process traditionally known as smicha, or laying on of hands, following years of immense and immersive religious study and practice, including daily synagogue attendance, extensive learning with multiple rabbis, Chumash or Torah study, Daf Yomi or daily Talmud study, Gemara classes, additional Talmud study, and an ongoing study of Hebrew, Yiddish, Aramaic, Ladino, along with traditional Chavrusa, which is paired study learning. Rather than pursuing a traditional congregational or academic rabbinical career, I chose to develop an alternative model of pastoral outreach and public engagement through digital media. For nearly 5 years, I've maintained a 24/7, 365 multi stream YouTube project that is dedicated to promoting world peace, transparency, and human connection. This initiative has been described as analogous to a real life Truman Show or a real life Big Brother, as it documents my daily life in an effort to encourage dialogue, understanding, and global community building. Through this project, I've created an openly accessible digital timeline and time capsule of human life dating back to the pandemic era. I maintain, in addition, a continuously operating radio broadcast in the background of my live streams to preserve and document the global news cycle in real time. In a previous era, the form of documentation or this form of documentation may have been taken the form of a diary, uh, diary keeping, or journalism. But in the modern age, I use continuous video archiving to preserve both my personal experiences and historical events so that future generations may study them from a historical, biological, sociological, and technological perspective. My work explores how concepts associated with postmodern Orthodox Judaism can contribute to contemporary conversations surrounding technology, digital identity, ethics, artificial intelligence, and humanity's collective future. I frequently discuss futurism, world peace initiatives, emerging technologies, and sustainable solutions to global challenges. I also examine the long term trajectory of human civilization, including ethical, social, and philosophical implications of humanity's potential transition toward a transhumanist future. My work seeks to foster interdisciplinary conversations that bridge religion, technology, data preservation, and humanity's shared future while encouraging thoughtful dialogue about building a more peaceful, sustainable, and interconnected world. And I do have a spiel that I give, really my breakdown of what I do. I am Rabbi Rothschild. I stream my life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for world peace. I've been doing so for more than 4 years. My streams go back to the pandemic. We've seen the death of a queen, the birth of AI, the coronation of a king, and everything in between. This is a real life Truman Show, a real life Big Brother. This is a timeline and a time capsule of human achievement. In the 1990s, the phrase content is king was coined, and I'm making it true today. In my own way, I'm kind of king of the internet. My streams are the largest human time capsule in global history. In 2017, The Economist magazine stated that data had overtaken petroleum as Earth's number one resource, and I have more data archived on the internet than any person ever, which is making me very influential. I'm going viral, and when I do, I want to make you, Missy, and your audience and your friends and family all financially independent if you're not already. I want to ensure that you have generational wealth if you don't already, and I want you to be able to start charities and philanthropic organizations of your own. I want to help end world hunger through the use of technology, such as agricultural drones, floating greenhouses, saltwater greenhouses, hydroponics, vertical farming, cloud seeding. I want to help end world thirst. I'm sponsored by some cryptocurrencies. And one of the things that we do is we build wells and water towers in developing nations such as Nigeria for the benefit of the less fortunate. Additionally, I'm an advocate for the LifeStar program and, most importantly, desalination technology, where we pump Earth's seawater onto land to make it drinkable. I love to talk about futurism topics, things like anti gravity, antimatter, faster than light travel, faster than light communication, artificial narrow intelligence, artificial general intelligence, artificial super intelligence, things like space tourism, space travel, interstellar travel, interstellar communications, terraforming of other planets, perhaps things like cryptocurrency and quantum computing. Things like Santa Claus machines, which are like replicators that one might have seen in Star Trek of years past. Things like de-extinction. Many people don't know this, but the first successful de-extinction has already taken place. It happened in the year 2003 with the Pyrenean ibex, which was a goat located in northern Spain, southern France. Fast forward to the year 2021, a company out of Dallas, Texas is founded known as Colossal Bioscientific. They've made it their goal that within the next 2 years, or by the year 2028, to reintroduce the woolly mammoth into the Arctic Circle, utilizing Asian elephant surrogates. I just think this is a mind blowing goal, and I'm excited to be able to archive it. They recently made headlines with their direwolf project. Moreover, they want to reintroduce the Tasmanian tiger as well as the dodo bird, which I just think is at one time in my life, I would have thought was science fiction, but it's becoming science fact. Moreover, I like to talk about things that improve people individually. So, for anyone out there, I want to preface this by saying if you don't want this type of technology, I don't think it should be forced on you. I think that if it's your body, your choice, you make the decisions that you want. But for those of us who are interested, I want to give them through my stream and through the monetization of it the resources to be able to live longer. Most of the audience probably has an average life expectancy or when they were born of about age 80. And I'd like to increase that if they want to age 100, 120 through the use of technology such as oxygen therapy, human growth hormones, stem cells, cryonics, cryogenics, cold shock therapy, nootropics, peptides, red light therapy, blood transfusions, testosterone replacement therapy, whatever people want to be able to extend their life, to be able to move into a future of perhaps being able to utilize age reversal techniques. And eventually, if they want, perhaps at age 120 or older, they may say, Rabbi, my life has been really amazing, and everything that you talked about with Missy in 2026 seemed like science fiction, but it's become science fact. But my body's starting to break down. What are the next plans? And this is again with your consent, with people's consent. If they want, they may be able to utilize a type of technology known as mind uploading technology, where with someone's consent, we scan their brain into a computer like a CAT scan or an MRI, knowing where every atom is in their central nervous system and their peripheral nervous system, for later download as an android, an avatar, a cyborg, a cybernetic being, a clone of themselves, a robot, an ethereal being, whatever they want to be. But essentially, what I'm saying to you and your audience is that there may be a future in a generation or two of some type of immortality, or at least digital immortality. And I find that to be of extreme excitement. We're really transitioning from your typical Homo sapien that had a limited lifespan into at least the being that is able to extend its lifespan and may be able to prevent death indefinitely or delay death indefinitely. Moreover, other types of technologies may be utilized, like revivification technology, where we can actually bring back people who have once died, which certainly would be an adaptation that wasn't previously utilized by Homo sapiens. And really, I think that the sky is the limit in terms of where we're moving into the future as humanity. So, with that, that's a little introduction about me.
That's a lot of an introduction about you. Let's just back up a little bit for people to. You're an advocate for peace, so I'm going to
Absolutely.
say this as a disclaimer: we're not going to get into politics at all today, unless it's like politics between the different species of gray aliens and things like that. And I also want to give this disclaimer: we do not diagnose, treat, or prescribe. This is an educational and entertainment purposes only information. So take that as you will. But let's back up. And how did you get interested in all this stuff with having a Jewish background? And you've not been to Israel, but you wanted to go, and then your plans changed. Just spend a couple minutes on that before we start talking into what we really want to get into, which is the UFOs, UAPs, and all this kind of stuff. And
Most certainly, yes. So I had plans to move to Israel around the pandemic, and then, of course, the pandemic limited some major travel opportunities, and then due to conflict there, it's just not necessarily the safest of places. So I make the United States my home, with perhaps a future of living abroad. In terms of how I got started with this, I was your traditional black hat Orthodox Jew attending synagogue every single day, multiple times a day, for years on end prior to the pandemic. And it was during the pandemic when my position as a certified project management professional went virtual or remote. And I had to shift a little bit from going into work every day and the commute within Southern California of uh, the daily grind to being able to uh, be at my computer and be at work with this remote role. And I found that much of my the classes I was taking and even some events that we were having within my religious life also went remote. So I had gone from really having no digital presence, no social media presence, to being on camera anywhere between 8 and 12 hours a day. And that reduced my anxiety in terms of, I would say, live streaming my life. And I was already doing it for half of my day. And I recognized that it would be interesting to be able to archive those videos in some way. But it would be a transition, but over the course of a few months in 2021 during the pandemic, when after work I would hit golf balls in Anaheim, California at Tiger Woods' golf course. And I would be on the driving range and I would make little jokes to myself about if I had hooked the ball or sliced the ball or topped the ball while archiving my golf swing because I really wanted to see what my golf swing looked like. And I recognized that some of these videos that I was making were kind of funny, and that my future family, God willing, someday may eventually want to perhaps see what their dear old dad was like before they were a gleam in my eye. So I would upload the content every single night after work, and it was taking me a long time. I would get throttled by ISPs, and I had to have multiple devices, and it was just very cumbersome. And in fall of 2021, I thought to myself, you know what? If I'm gonna continue to be on camera so much, it's kind of a waste that it just is streamed and it doesn't archive anywhere. No one can learn anything from that, or generally, it's more difficult. I want people to be able to study it in the future. And I had seen the movie The Truman Show and I had seen the television show Big Brother and thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting if I just kind of became one of those characters, uh, basically who live streams their life? And in fall of 2021, I created my first YouTube account and my first Twitch account and began to link them. And as I was live streaming my life from one device originally, or maybe just a couple of devices, I thought, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I want to do it better than anybody's ever done it before. So I bought 33 different devices, everything from laptops to iPhones to Android devices, certainly, and things like Chromebooks and tablets. And I put them around myself in 360 degrees. And that's basically how it started.
so we have a question from Julia Anchorhaven. How many channels do you have that are
So next,
viral?
that are viral. I don't know if I necessarily have any one channel that's viral. I do have some channels that have tens of thousands of followers on Twitch. My channel Viral Rabbi is tens of thousands, but I for reasons like I archive that channel for posterity, and I archive many of my channels. And the reason why is because if I'm ever streaming, anybody who knows the streaming world, you can get strikes for perhaps copyright infringement. And so I do have a radio going in the background, and if it plays a song that is copyrighted, I can run into the issue where I can lose the channel. So every 6 months or so, I create brand new accounts and archive them. In terms of my social media, I have more social media than any person on earth. I have over 100 YouTube accounts. I have over 200 Instagram accounts. I have over 500 Twitch accounts. I have over 1,000 TikTok accounts.
Why so many though? What's the reason?
I want to be uncancelable. I want redundant streams. So
Oh, I
uh,
see what you're saying. Okay.
every
Are you
every
under different names on all those, or how
if
does that
it,
work?
yeah, usually it's just Rabbi Rothschild and then some numbers after it. So 001, 002, 003. So there is some rhyme to the reasoning, but really the easiest way to find them is just to type viral rabbi or hashtag viral rabbi in any search engine, and you'll be able to find all of my
Because
content.
I did hashtag Rabbi Rothschild. So
That's okay.
yeah,
I use that as well. The reason why I use Viral Rabbi is sometimes Rabbi Rothschild, it's 15 characters, and some platforms limit the amount of characters that you can have. So Viral Rabbi is a little bit shorter and allows me to have that hashtag more visible. Moreover, I have over 5,000 Blue Sky accounts and 10,000 Kick accounts. So this is really a huge compilation of human data. In terms of the question, where are my biggest channels that I have like nearly 50,000 on under Viral Rabbi on Twitch. I have something like 10,000 on Instagram. I have some other smaller platforms that have tens of thousands, like Nemo TV. But really, the biggest channels that I have thousands on TikTok. But what makes me different than other streamers is I have multiple accounts. So I might have 50 TikTok accounts that have over 1,000 people on them, which gives me the ability to be able to archive much of my data on different platforms and really just do my best to be uncancelable. It's very easy to cancel someone
that's right.
if they only
Absolutely.
have one account. So it would take a very prudent, very determined individual or group of people to be able to wipe my presence clean from the internet, which is what I want. I want this to be something that is redundant, that has backups of my backups, so that all of the data when I go viral is eventually able to be discovered.
I see. Yeah, yeah. Because I've already lost my channel once. Rob from Typical Skeptic has lost it. Many people have lost their channels, and I'm trying to rebuild this. So, how did you end up finding us? That's what I'm curious.
Sure, your email was in your Spotify profile, I believe, for the channel, and I was looking up people who were interested in common causes as I am, and I found your email and sent you an email.
Oh, so another question: do you use AI?
All the time, absolutely. So one for 1 year prior to the launch of OpenAI, I have archived on YouTube and other platforms. And then I was an early adopter of OpenAI's ChatGPT in November of 2022, and a user when it launched on November 30th, 2022. And so I've been able to see the development of ChatGPT and Grok and Claude and Gemini,
And who do you
and
like better of all of them? If you had to pick one, who do you like the best?
they all have unique traits, I would say, in terms, and they change.
And,
So
and what's the most user friendly? Because I'll tell you, I thought I liked Grok, but then when it didn't sync well between Android and Apple, I wasn't too happy about it, and it lost all my data, so I wasn't
that's
happy.
unfortunate, most certainly. I would say that I am somewhat biased toward ChatGPT just
They're easier.
because it's the one that I've been using the most. However, in terms of the image creation, I do like Gemini because Gemini gives you, I think, like maybe 30 credits a day to be able to create images when ChatGPT, I believe, gives you like three, something like that. So, whatever one of the platforms gives me the most amount of free opportunities, I generally utilize them. One thing that I do, I write a blog. It's rabbirothschild.medium.com, And what's unique about my blog is whenever I have an idea on which I want to write, I take the idea, I write it, and then I put it through ChatGPT or Grok or any of the other um, AI engines, and then I will take the result and put it into another AI engine and ask the other engine to compare it from a logical soundness standpoint, and it will tell me wherever I have perhaps a weakness in an argument or where I can certainly strengthen an element of my writing, and then I will go back and revise. And so I'm really proud of the writing that I have published because not only do I think that it is sound logic, but multiple engines of AI do as well.
And
Um,
we've got some questions here. Can you see? I don't know if you can see it, but Eric's asking, how can one person manage all the channels? And then there's another one from Julia about monetizing. And that's a question for a lot of us.
yeah, certainly. So how can one person manage all the channels? Uh, it's an excellent question. I
I
keep
can't.
I keep a large spreadsheet that has much of the information of what channel is managing what device is managing what. So that's probably the easiest way that I am able to manage individual channels. Additionally, I multi-stream on my devices, which I think makes it a little easier because then generally I only have to log into one main account, and the streams are multi-streamed to different platforms. So just to give the audience an idea, on something like there's a platform known as Rumble Studio that allows for free multi-streaming, which I think is great. And I advise if you're an influencer, you should multi-stream. Why waste your time on just YouTube or just Twitch or just Kick or just Rumble when you could be utilizing all of those audiences at the same time and basically compounding your influence? And so I use Rumble Studio to live stream simultaneously from YouTube and Facebook and Kick and Twitch and certainly Rumble itself. So each one of my devices is compounding the amount of data that I'm creating, but I generally only have to log in with one account and remember the credentials for that one account. But it does get complicated, and I do have some channels that I've just completely forgotten how to log in, and I don't know. It basically one day I hope to be in the good graces of a company like Google or Twitch or TikTok or whatever it may be to be able to get in some of them. But if not, then they're just archives for humans to be able to study in the future. In terms of monetization, I do not recommend the process that I have gone for monetization. The best way to do it is to have one account per platform and to read the terms and conditions beforehand. That's really important as well to know what you can and can't do on different platforms, and to know what the expectations are to be monetized on each. So perhaps like on YouTube, you need a certain amount of subscribers. You may need perhaps a certain number of watch hours. You may need to have an established account. In something like Kick, there's the Kick Creator Program that can pay you a certain dollar amount per hour for you to be able to stream, but you have to stream a certain amount within every 30 days or so. In terms of Twitch, it's a similar program that they have. I personally think Rumble has a great program where you start earning the minute that you start streaming on there, which I think is really cool. The idea is that if you um, create a brand new Rumble account and start streaming, you'll make a few cents. I'm not saying that it's enough to retire on by any means, but it's nice to see that your account is, you don't look at it and it's got 20 bucks in it. And if you have enough accounts, you might, just off of Rumble be able to um, do whatever it is you may wish with that money. At least for my perspective and the monetization, I don't really worry about the money. I don't worry about the amount of views that I get because I am in so many different platforms with so many different accounts that it's hard for me to just focus on one. When I first started, of course, I just had one account and on each platform. But again, you'll find that, like in a case like mine, I may fall asleep during a stream because I do sleep on stream. And when that
Yeah,
occurs,
that's what they're saying. That you do you stream from your bed, and one of your Anchor Haven says this on one link. It's a warning: Rabbi is a pimp, multiple 24/7 streams, whatever
yeah,
that means.
Yeah, I mean, the term pimp is something that's just like a funny, cool individual. And I am live on 24 different streams or 24/7 on multiple different streams. I could have said a cool person or I could have said a neat guy or whatever. But traditionally, the term pimp is just somebody who people like to be around. And I give kind of a fictitious warning at the beginning that I'm a cool individual and you're going to like what I do. In
And
terms of,
and then Rob says this, not to interrupt, because I want to get into some of the other stuff too. And then we can go back to the technical stuff. Rob says if you stream all the time, you can get in on the Rumble creator program, but they will invite you or something. I know he said something changed with Rumble the other day, like from 40%, you have to have 75%. But see, I'm just on like two things. I'm just on YouTube and Facebook for right now because like technology's like, for me, just like that's why I need a tech person.
most certainly, and as we have discussed offline, I'll help you in any way that I can. In terms of the different requirements to be able to be monetized on the different platforms, it absolutely does change. When I first started, I think YouTube, you needed 1,000 followers and 4,000 watch hours, and then that increased to something like 10,000, which is quite an up in their requirements. And so it's a good idea to get in as early as you can because generally the requirements to be monetized do not lessen, they become more strict. And if you are looking to be an influencer just to make money, I don't know if it's the best idea unless you already have a large community. I can tell you, at least on Discord, I have about 3,000 people in my Discord. And these are people who are quite loyal to me, some of whom spend 24 hours a day with me. They live stream their lives alongside of me. And that's what gives me joy when people come in and connect with me directly. I'd much rather have that than just a random comment on one of my numerous videos or one of my numerous channels. So I invite anybody who wants to connect with me 24 hours a day, join my Discord, discord.me/rabbi. You'll be part of a community of thousands of people, real people. We watch movies together, we play games together, we watch sports together. This is a place for people who need pastoral advice or employment advice or relationship advice can come 24 hours a day and connect with me. So in terms of the monetization aspect, it's not that important to me. In fact, it's not really at all important to me at this point. I know that the monetization of my channels will be immense in the future. And if you don't mind, do you mind if I explain how I plan on monetizing this channel?
Uh, let's go back because let's go get into some of the woo. I just want to put this out there before we get into too much tech stuff. Are you an experiencer?
It depends how you want to define that. At one point, about 13 years ago or so, I saw a plasma ball. If you're familiar, there was a plasma ball flap that occurred
I know them well.
okay, excellent. That occurred not just in the United States but globally. And so I did see a plasma ball that flew. I was driving my car. It was in the United States, and about it was in the evening, about close to sunset, but not yet sunset. And I knew where the sun was, so it definitely wasn't the sun. And basically, something the size of a beach ball or so flew over my car about 50 feet or so. It was bright orange, and I was traveling about 20 miles per hour.
Was
And
this in California?
it was in the United States. I don't want to say the exact location.
Okay.
And it flew over my car, and I felt this intense intelligence from it. That there was like it felt not artificial. Well, I should say it didn't feel man-made. It felt intelligent, like you could almost communicate with it, though I did not. It flew. It was traveling about 20 miles per hour, and I was traveling about 20 miles per hour, and it went into a suburban area. And I remember thinking, my whole life I wanted to see something, a UFO or a craft or an alien of some sort, and I never had that opportunity. But I did see this, and so it resonated with me, and I ended up looking up information on this. and found that this was a huge phenomenon that was happening across the world at that time, and it still happens. And I've seen these plasma balls create crop circles, and I've seen them being chased by black helicopters. So I really thought that that was really interesting. In terms of an abduction, to my knowledge, I've never been abducted. In terms of any kind of paranormal, ghosts and that kind of stuff, I don't recall ever having that kind of an experience. But I have seen a plasma ball, and
Well, that
I,
is paranormal in a
it
way.
is. It most certainly is. And so I invite your audience, if they have had this type of experience, to go to the MUFON website and to create a case. Even if it's a decade later, it's important that this type of information is archived for future generations. And so I do have a regret that I didn't create a case right away. It took me a little while to be able to create a case, but I ended up eventually creating a case, and did my best to provide as much information as possible. It was orange, about the size of a beach ball. It was almost like it was on fire, and it was completely silent. And it's the only one that I've ever seen, but that was certainly an interesting experience that I had.
Oh, okay. People are wanting to know if you saw Disclosure Day.
Yes, I did. Would you like to have that discussion now?
Yes, please. I'm trying to read the chat too. I'm going to read it from my phone as you're saying it.
Most certainly. So I did have a chance to see Disclosure Day, and for anyone who hasn't seen it, I would just give the spoiler alert, because we probably are going to talk about some things that were within the movie that I don't want to ruin for you. So I personally had a great amount of excitement for this movie.
Me too.
Um, Excellent. And so having the opportunity with we had um, Steven Spielberg having doing a huge press tour in terms of it, and it having a leading lady like Emily Blunt. I thought this was going to be a major event, and it left me, frankly, somewhat disappointed. And for anyone out there, just to give an idea of what it's about, it stars Emily Blunt. It's it explores what happens when proof of extraterrestrial life becomes public knowledge. It centers on a cybersecurity whistleblower exposing classified alien related files, and a meteorologist who is played by Emily Blunt, who begins experiencing unexplained phenomena and telepathic language. Both characters are linked by a hidden history of alien contact and government suppression. I thought that this movie had a really great opportunity to blow the doors off the alien subject, and it just left me with a lot to be desired. A basic story overview: there's a major corporation that is revealed to have hidden evidence of alien encounters for decades. There's a data breach that exposes classified files tied to UFO events dating back to Roswell. Uh, Basically, the two main characters discover they were involved in childhood abductions connected to a larger extraterrestrial experiment. A whistleblower group helps them uncover suppressed memories and alien communication. They eventually broadcast global evidence of alien contact to the world. And the film ends with a single transmitted alien message interpreted as listen. And I
Yeah.
don't know what you thought, but to me, it seems like there's going to be a Disclosure Day 2, just based out that there was a
Oh, yeah.
huge opening. There's a huge opportunity here, which was somewhat disappointing to me, because I wanted to get to the bottom of this. Overall, I found the movie to be quite boring, uh, honestly, and somewhat unrealistic in many ways. But I understand it is Hollywood. I found as well that there were some interesting aspects of the discussion of Lyndon Johnson at Homestead base in Florida, with Jackie Gleason, to be an interesting
Oh,
topic, and the video that they purported of having the Roswell alien crash bodies, and the case in Pennsylvania, to be quite interesting. And to me, overall, Disclosure Day does help the disclosure movement, because it does put It does make the topic more mainstream, but I just thought they could have done so much more with the movie. And
Well, to me, what the movie was, it wasn't focused on the ending to do with all the stuff with the aliens. It was everything that led up to that. It was the journey that was important for me. It was the signaling with the bird, with the animals, with the clicking, the targeted individuals, the remote viewing and mind probing and things that these agencies do to create Manchurian candidates. It was all that stuff for some of us that, especially like the SSP community. I think there was some people think, maybe that had been in this for a while, but for people getting their memories back, I think it was very, very important. I think it disclosed a lot more, and it was a big step, say, from, E.T. or Close Encounters of the Third Kind or Jaws. Yeah, it did have the Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones type of things with the car chases and hanging off the train, but that makes it fun. You do have to have some of that Hollywood stuff in there, but I was actually expected far less, and I received more, and actually it was quite emotional for me.
oh, excellent. Okay, great. So I have heard some people who have enjoyed it. I've heard people who have not. The idea of the car chase with the on the train and everything, yes, absolutely is a Hollywood creation, which I do understand. So the parts that you really liked, we might have kind of had opposite opinions. I found the end to be much better. So the
The
ending,
end was kind of a letdown to me. The other thing is for them to say there's only two. There was only two in that mission, so it's not that there's just that. And it's interesting, they put masculine and feminine together in what some have called like Neander stance, where they're both abducted together as children, right? And then they're
right?
brought back together and things like that. But there isn't only two, it's two for that particular mission. But so what got you interested from that plasma ball into, alien abduction, UFOs, UAPs, SSP, things like that? How was your interest before that?
Yes,
Was it since?
yes. It was. So one time I was a major skeptic of the UFO phenomenon. I would debate people publicly that this is bunk, that this is fringe theory. This is not scientific, and I will be the first to admit I was wrong. And it takes a strong person to admit that they're wrong on a topic. I was absolutely wrong. The thing that connected with me or resonated with me and really convinced me that the UFO phenomenon is real and that they are here was the Disclosure Project of Dr. Stephen Greer that I first saw around 2008 or 2009. And if for those not familiar, the Disclosure Project was an event at the National Press Corps on May 9th, 2001, where Dr. Stephen Greer, who was an emergency room physician, uh, brought in a dozen or so whistleblowers from all aspects of military intelligence, international experts, people who've worked at NASA, and they had real data that, for the first time in my life, that was able to convince me that this was more of a phenomenon than I had even that I than I had once perceived. It was the first time that it was one whistleblower after another, after another, after another, as opposed to most UFO documentaries that I had seen, which were just someone who was, in a shadowy um, background, and you couldn't really, they distorted their voices and things like that. It was not this at all. This was people who had been credentialed in the highest levels of the government, the FAA, NASA, certainly within military intelligence, and they had real data, FAA readings. They had whistleblowers who talk about NASA um, photoshopping or airbrushing these crafts in publicly available photos, and that was a groundbreaking event in my life that caused me to then really dig into Bob Lazar, Area 51, S4, Element 115, Un Pentium, Moscovium, whatever you want to call it.
Have you
The
been to Rachel, Nevada? Have you been there?
I've been close. I have not been to the Little Alien or anything like that,
Okay,
though. No.
and then did you ever see that show that was on Netflix? And oh, by the way, first of all, Stephen Greer, Dr. Stephen Greer, actually was a emergency physician at Mission Hospital in Asheville, where I'm right near.
Oh, okay. There you go.
And Anchor Haven wants to know, did the rabbi get any high strangeness on camera? And she had another question here somewhere. Let me see. I'll find it in this chat. Oh, about Stargate. She wants to. We'll get into Stargate, you guys, when we talk about the Nephilim and Zachariah Zitchin and all that stuff. We're not there yet. So, yeah. Did you get anything on camera with your live streaming?
People ask me this. I don't really watch my streams that much. I just check them from a quality assurance perspective to make sure they're archiving. But it's so much that I have to be able to delve through. It's literally nearly 5 years of 24/7 continuous streaming. I do want to preface by saying every 12 hours, generally, I stop my streams and restart them so that they're archived on YouTube. So for anyone out there who, I mean, it'll be a group effort, certainly. But there will be people who will be able to watch huge amounts of my streams and see if we do catch any type of paranormal activity or any kind of just interesting aspects. And what's also interesting is I'm streaming from different angles. So that usually isn't done within many. We don't have multiple angles usually of
And
paranormal.
outdoors too, or just inside?
No, I stream outdoors. I've streamed as far north as Santa Barbara, as far south as San Diego, as far east as the desert and mountains, as far west as the Pacific Ocean. I've streamed in Beverly Hills, in Los Angeles, at Disneyland, really everywhere within Southern California. Um, and I find it easiest though to stream inside because that's where the Wi-Fi is the strongest, and I can't carry 33 different devices with me from a practicality standpoint, but also I just don't have that much data to be able to upload. So I do have a far more IRL stream content than probably most people have of their entire life on camera. But most of my streams are inside and generally where I have the strongest wireless signal.
Okay, and back to the the alien abduction phenomenon, things like that. So you said you'd been to Rachel, you got into Bob Lazar, Area 51, and all this stuff, and obviously dumbs and all that. Which you talk on all that as you feel comfortable. What you got from it?
Most certainly. So let's talk about I want to make sure that we have addressed the topic of the monetization, and then I'll get into all that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. So, within what I do of this continuous digital human and historical media engine, I feel that it could be the biggest event in global history. And I say that because I cover so many different topics, including alien disclosure. And there's a really important aspect of being able to monetize this as a live broadcast layer, the real-time attention capture. There's a massive archival layer. There's the viral distribution layer, a monetization layer with ads, sponsorships, subscriptions, and stuff, the potential AI training layer, and a cultural timeline layer. So for anyone out there who may doubt that this has the opportunity to make not only me but the audience extremely wealthy, because I want to help everybody with that, I did want to ensure that there are a lot of ways that we're going to be able to make money on this when it goes viral. In terms of the discussions that you had with dumbs and alien abductions and such, so at least my understanding of with the alien abduction phenomenon, um, really we have some major cases that I started to study over the course of the decade or so after I became a believer in alien in the alien phenomena.
Were you a
And
listener of Coast to Coast, like Art
every
Bell?
single night, every single
Oh
night,
yeah,
yeah.
we're Art Bell, George Nor. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I've called into Coast to Coast multiple times to share just, predictions and things like that. Yeah, so anybody who is a Coast to Coast fan, every single night for 7 hours a night, I listen to Coast to Coast. There's on KFI AM 640 in Los Angeles. There is a 4 hour show, and then they replay the show for another 3 hours before the morning broadcast. So you don't have to necessarily, if you don't want, subscribe to the co-subscription because you could listen to every show on my stream. So I'm a huge Coast to Coast fan. I used to be afraid of Coast to Coast AM. Um, just when I was a little kid because it seemed really scary and they would talk about things that maybe weren't so focused on children. But as I got older, I would listen to Art Bell and some of his archive, and then of course George Norrie, and get really excited about this was a place where people could be able to connect, share their stories, share their experiences, and I found this to be very scientific for anyone out there. I mean, we're talking about advanced propulsion and advanced particle physics and anti-gravity and antimatter and really things that many people do consider to be scientific, but just because it's not always the most mainstream of a discussion, people have some doubts about. But in terms of the coast to coast realm, I'm a coastie. I love it. Listen to it every night. In terms of the alien abduction phenomenon, I find these cases to be of extreme interest because this is where we are able to derive a lot of our understanding of firsthand encounters with aliens. And so, to just go through a few of the ones that I have found interesting, there's, of course, the Antonio Villas Boas case from October 15th, 1957, near Sao Francisco de Sales in Brazil. And the background is Boas was a 23-year-old farmer. He was working late at night plowing fields in his family's farm, and because of the summer heat, he was working late into the sunset. He noticed what appeared to be a bright red star. The object seemed unusually bright and appeared to move toward him. As it approached, he realized it was not a star. The object descended toward the field. He described the craft as egg shaped, metallic in appearance, rested on three legs, had a rotating red light on top, emitted a bright glow. The capture was he tried to flee on his tractor. Four humanoid beings emerged. They chased him through the field. They physically grabbed him and carried him aboard. His description of the beings, they were roughly 5 feet tall. They had gray coveralls, helmet like headgear, blue eyes, no understandable speech. They communicated through barking and growling sounds, which is different than some of the other cases that we have, which I always found to be interesting. I always find the inside of the crafts to be just extremely exciting. This craft had metallic corridors, strange red symbols on the walls, a strong chemical odor, bright lighting without visible light fixtures, and a medical examination was conducted, which is pretty common of these. His clothing was removed, blood was drawn from his chin, his entire body was inspected. There were strange instruments used, and then this has always been mind blowing to me. A female humanoid approached him. There was an encounter. Gas was released into the room. He interpreted this female to be attractive. She had blonde hair, blue eyes, high cheekbones, large cat like eyes. And I've also heard interpretations that this was just how he interpreted the being, that the being could have been an alien looking uh, species as well. He claimed that engaged in sexual intercourse. The female afterward pointed to her abdomen, to him, and then to the sky, which he believed was indicating she would bear a hybrid child. He was later released to a field several hours later. The craft descended rapidly, and it disappeared into the night sky. Of historical importance, this is often considered the first modern alien abduction case, and it introduced the reproductive themes later in other abduction cases. Of course, there's the Betty and Barney Hill case, September 19th to 20th, 1961, in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. The background is that Betty and Barney Hill were a married couple returning from vacation in Canada. Something that's unique about them in this case is that they were an interracial couple when interracial couples were not considered to be normal. They were driving in rural New Hampshire at night. The initial sighting was that Betty noticed a bright light. It appeared to move independently of the stars. The object followed their vehicle for many miles. They had a close encounter. Barney stopped the car. He viewed the object through binoculars and he claimed he saw a large disc shaped craft, rows of windows, humanoid figures looking directly at him. One figure appeared to be the leader. There was missing time. It They returned home much later than expected. Approximately 2 hours were accounted for. Their watches stopped working. Betty's dress was damaged. Barney's shoes were unusually scuffed, and they had recall. Years later, they both underwent hypnosis. They described the beings as having large wraparound eyes, gray skin, hairless heads, thin noses, small mouths, and uniform like clothing. Aboard the craft, Betty's account, she was escorted through corridors. She met a leader figure. She was placed on an examination table. Her hair sample was taken, skin samples taken. A needle was inserted into her abdomen. Barney's account was that he was separated from Betty, subjected to medical examination, body measurements recorded, cup like device was placed on his body, and then there was a star map. Betty claimed that she was shown a three-dimensional star chart. She later drew the map from memory. Some UFO researchers associated it with the Zeta Reticuli system, and we'll talk about the Zetas in a little bit if we have the opportunity. There was historical importance. This created the modern gray alien archetype, and it became the template for most later abduction reports. Other things that I always found to be interesting about this case were that the aliens ripped Betty's dress allegedly, that they weren't able to figure out something as simple as a zipper, that Barney's shoes were scuffed on the tops of the shoes, which meant that he was probably dragged, and that they were very scared thereafter. They never made a huge amount of money from this, and most of the alien abductees or people who've had some type of anomalous encounter do not make a lot of money on this. There isn't a lot of reason to want to be someone who considers yourself to be connected to these types of phenomena, because there's a lot of ridicule for when this occurs. And I should have prefaced all of this discussion by saying I don't know if any of this is true. All of this is alleged, but this is the history of the alien
Do,
abduction.
do you ever follow David Politis, the missing 411?
Yes, I do, and
Yeah,
I have
and
for some
also
years.
Whitley Strieber. So you can comment on those two, because Whitley Strieber, communion and
Yep, we'll get in
testimony.
we'll
Yeah.
get into that in just a moment. And as for David Paulides, I think he's doing a really great job of trying to get to the bottom of what's going on in national parks. I don't know, frankly, but there are some amazing stories that he has of disappearances. Um, and we do know, we'll go into the story in a few moments, um, of some people who have been abducted within heavily forested areas. And
Yeah, and how much of it do you think could be my lab, if you're comfortable talking about that? Like,
it most certainly could be this. That would be a really great opportunity for people to be abducted. It provides a my lab uh, provides um, or a national forest
do you
or
think it's a good opportunity? I think it has to be consensual. See, the problem is if you don't consent to being abducted and you are against your will, that's not a good thing.
no, I agree. No, consent is very important in this, and I don't agree that somebody should be taken ever against their will. No, what I'm saying is that a military abduction encounter, it would it's much easier to do one of these in a rural environment than it is
Oh,
in
yeah, yeah, yeah.
urban
In
environment.
the missing 411. Now, this
Exactly.
also brings up Bigfoot. And do you think, I feel Bigfoot or Sasquatch is interdimensional, and some people actually say that they fly craft, kind of like Chewie, Chewbacca in Star Wars.
Yes.
What do you think?
I'm in agreement with you, and so I'm glad that you're enlightened on this subject. Um, if we really think about how vast the universe could be, any kind of alien that you can imagine probably exists in one form or another. And so, of course, a hairy being could exist. We have heard in the on the Bigfoot subject that there may be some type of connection between UFOs and Bigfoot. What one person may consider to be a Bigfoot, like a great ape, could be extra dimensional. Could be interdimensional, I should say, or extraterrestrial. So, with the idea that shapeshifting may be a reality and you can shapeshift into anything that you want, including a reptile or an alien gray, the idea of a Bigfoot like Chewbacca is not that strange to me. So, I'm not someone who thinks that Bigfoot is necessarily all a hoax. I do have questions like why don't we find dead ones, and how do they reproduce, and why don't we ever really get really great film on the matter?
Yes,
Like,
the Patterson film. I mean, I
yes,
think still the only one that's really credible in all
that's
this.
that's right. And I believe I've heard discussions whether these are true or not. I don't know, but the Patterson Gimlin film is one of the top five most viewed clips in global history. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. But you're absolutely right. It is. If it's not top five, it is one of the most persistent ideas in terms of the Bigfoot phenomenon, and to this day hasn't fully been um, clarified as to exactly what occurred then. There have been discussions, oh, there were deathbed confessions and there perhaps was some malfeasance going on, but overall it's the best evidence that we have that occurred in Northern California decades ago. I'd like something more recent. I think everybody would, especially with the advent of trail cams that are basically motion sensor detection devices. I would expect that we should be able to have better evidence of Bigfoot, and I don't have the answer as to why we don't.
What is your favorite disclosure movie? If Day of Disclosure didn't do it, or Disclosure Day didn't do it for you, what did it for you? Which one? You know, some people say it was Starman. I mean, AI. That was a great disclosure movie to do with AI. Uh, and then there's shows like Halo. I don't know if you've seen Halo yet, or Altered Carbon, or for me it was like with the SSP stuff and cloning was Orphan Black. I mean, do you have any shows or movies that you would recommend to open people up to have a deeper understanding? I mean, which one do you think breaks it down the best?
Uh, I don't know if I'm the best person to say which one has broken it down the best because I haven't seen them all. And I'm more of an advocate of documentaries in terms
Okay.
of the alien phenomenon because a lot of Hollywood can take make some connections that aren't always there. However, for anyone who hasn't seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I
Oh
feel
yeah,
that that's one of the classics, and really
Richard Dreyfuss movie. Yeah.
most
Mm-hmm.
certainly. And E.T. E.T. to me brought the idea of the phrase extraterrestrial into the mainstream within the mid 1980s. And there's a certain nostalgia that I have for that. I think Independence Day really put aliens as a blockbuster event that it was just such a huge budget and huge summer release that it was one of those movies that forced everybody to see it, that I don't know if Disclosure Day has had. The movie industry has changed since in the last 30 years or so, in terms of what gets people excited, but those are some probably more conventional, more mainstream movies that I think bring the idea of disclosure in multiple ways with um, close encounters, with the idea of the different connections that one might have to extraterrestrials, with ET, and actually having a personal relationship with aliens in a way that we hadn't really previously seen in a big way, and then Independence Day, where we have these crafts over every major American city, and we're starting to see every single television channel focused on this phenomenon. Those are some of my favorites.
Okay. Now let's look at this because the thumbnail that I designed, because what we were talking about with breakaway civilizations and possibly going into space. Elon Musk is obsessed with going to Mars. Whether we've been to the moon, if we've been, and the Stanley Kubrick's footage and all that stuff to do with the moon landings. I always say the moon landings were probably filmed at Meteor Crater in Winslow, Arizona, because it looks like the moon to me. But where do you feel we're going with this? And also, how does Judaism fit into this as far as like these breakaway civilizations? Like it's almost like preserving, I see with you, preserving like a lineage, a heritage as we take the next leap of hopefully becoming a type 0 civilization to at least a type 1 civilization. What do you feel? I know that's
Absolutely.
a lot wrapped up into one, but we're
It
like
Good
leaving the earth
questions.
and we're starting to go somewhere. We're going to know where no man and woman has gone before. you know
That's correct. So in terms of the idea of leaving Earth, um, if I may, I would reference Chaim Eshed. Uh,
Yes, I wanted you to bring that up. Yes.
Absolutely. So, for anyone who doesn't know who Chaim Eshed was, or is he or his revelation, he had an event that occurred in 2020 regarding extraterrestrial life, a purported galactic federation, and the alleged cooperation between extraterrestrials, the United States, and Israel. So his claims received worldwide media attention because he was of his senior career in Israeli defense and space programs. While none of this can necessarily be proven, what he added to the disclosure topic is quite interesting and specifically involves Mars. And when you were talking about Elon Musk, I feel it was prudent to be able to bring it up now. So basically, Chaim was the former head of Israel's space security program. He served for decades within Israeli defense related space activities. He was a retired major general equivalent in the Israeli defense circles. He received numerous Israeli security awards and he became internationally known following the statements he made in 2020. Why this story became famous in terms of disclosure: in interviews promoting a book, he stated that extraterrestrials exist, a galactic federation exists, the United States knows about extraterrestrials, Israel has interacted with extraterrestrials, humanity is not yet ready for open disclosure, a secret underground facility exists on Mars involving humans and extraterrestrials. These claims were widely reported internationally, though there's no documentary evidence accompanying just these statements. There were no government confirmed the allegations, and of course, this remains unverified. But basically, his career from 1981 to 2011, he directed the Israeli military space program, in was one of the leaders of it. He oversaw satellite related activities. He was involved in national security space projects, and he became one of Israel's most senior space security officials. In December 2020 is when all the international attention occurred. The story spread globally after publication of interviews discussing his claims. News outlets worldwide reported his story. The interest surged in UFOs and disclosure communities. Mainstream media covered the allegations because of Ashed's credentials. What he talked about, and I found this to be of extreme interest, was the Galactic Federation. He claimed that there was a galactic federation that exists, that multiple extraterrestrial civilizations belong to it, humanity is being observed, contact is limited because humanity is not ready. The alleged purpose is to prevent premature disclosure, there, according to his narrative, to monitor humanity and study civilization development. Now, in terms of the United States connection, he states that there was cooperation, that the U.S. government knows extraterrestrials exist, that certain information remains classified, and that this contact has occurred for many years. He stated that President Trump, uh, who was then president at that time, uh, and then would become president again. He was aware of certain information, and that perhaps disclosure efforts within the administration had been considered. His Mars claim was that there was an underground Mars base. This was one of his most discussed statements. He claimed that there's a joint underground facility that exists on Mars. Humans and extraterrestrials allegedly cooperate there, and scientific activities occur at that facility. He stated that humanity was not ready, that extraterrestrials do not want open disclosure yet, humanity must develop further, and contact would eventually become public. The connection to the UFO disclosure movement is that um, basically his claims gave more government transparency, or perhaps led people to investigate the issue more regarding UFOs or UAPs. In terms of um, the reaction from the UFO community, some researchers argued that his career gave his statements unusual significance. Senior officials rarely make such claims publicly, and that the story deserved investigation. Of course, there were skeptics. Critics asked, where is the documentation? Where are the photographs? Where are the corroborating witnesses? Why has no government confirmed the claims? These are excellent questions to be asked as well. Uh, this was a comparison, or the comparisons have been made to other disclosure figures like Paul Hellyer, Edgar Mitchell, David Grush. Paul Hellyer was a Canadian leader within the Canadian government. Edgar Mitchell was an Apollo astronaut, and David Grush is a U.S. military whistleblower. Um,
And Ed
so,
Mitchell also he started the Institute of Noetic Sciences.
Correct. So common themes within the narrative of the Galactic Federation that they are an interstellar organization, that there are multiple civilizations, and there's an oversight role. It's been described like a United Nations of space. There's controlled disclosure perhaps occurring that humanity's not ready, that this information will be released gradually, and secrecy is maintained. That this is basically known as soft disclosure. He described advanced technology from highly advanced civilizations who have been involved and interested in the long term observation of Earth. His Mars operations, their secret facilities, human extraterrestrial cooperation. Really, this was just something that he wrote. There wasn't necessarily much evidence or really any evidence of it, but he certainly claimed that aliens exist. He claimed that the Galactic Federation exists. He claims that there is a Mars base. Uh, but the government has not confirmed any of these claims, and no evidence has been produced. So, in terms of Haim Eshed, if you have to remember anything about him, he was a highly placed Israeli space security official. In 2020, he publicly discussed extraterrestrials, a galactic federation, and the Mars facility, and these claims attracted worldwide attention but remain unverified and unsupported. With that
Oh,
being said, you brought up another point regarding humanity's development into a type 1 civilization. Is that correct?
yeah. I want to bring this in real quick because I'm just thinking of, as you brought up this guy's name. I can't say his name, so I'm not going to try. But Avi Loeb and Three Eye Atlas. What did you think of that?
Um,
Three Eye
I'm
Atlas.
certainly am not a yeah, I'm certainly not an expert on on all aspects of these these disclosures, but I do think that he he helped to promote the disclosure effort, and the Three Eye Atlas. Um, as I understand, it's the third interstellar object discovered passing our solar system. He theorized that it had unusual anomalies, including its huge size, trajectory, um, and uh, basically there was a huge amount of abundance of high deuterium and to hydrogen ratios. Um, and as I understand now, by in the current time, the Three Eye Atlas is well beyond Jupiter. It's speeding away from the sun and back into interstellar space. But even without being able to prove what this was, I think Avi Loeb helped to promote the disclosure topic by bringing in some new evidence of some type of anomaly and forcing people to take this subject more seriously.
Okay, and then you can talk about the Type One civilization and how, and then circling back around to Judaism and all religion. How does this fit into the narrative of religion as we go into space, or not? And how does religion change? How does it get repackaged to, like say people, you're bringing the Torah now to the little green men, where the Catholic Church is in a way is already allotted for this, like, well, God created everything, so that way, these creatures need to be saved or whatever. You know where I'm going.
Most certainly. So one thing that you had mentioned previously is developing from a type 1 civilization or type 0 civilization to type 1. And for those who don't know what we're referencing, this is the Kardashev scale. For those who don't know, this was developed by Nikolai Kardashev. He was a Russian physicist who died in 2019. He worked for the Russian Space Institute. He focused on radio astronomy and the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. The Kardashev scale was first proposed in 1964 in a paper, Transmission of Information by Extraterrestrial Civilizations. Um, so the idea of a type 1 civilization, which has been proposed, we are not quite yet there is a planetary civilization. It uses all energy available on its home planet. It's able to control its climate systems, its oceans, the planetary energy grid. And humanity today has been estimated to be about zero point 0.7. That's Carl Sagan, who said that decades ago, and I still don't know if we're there yet. There's a type 2, which is a stellar civilization. It uses energy from its entire star, possibly megastructures like a Dyson swarm or Dyson sphere. And we are most likely far from this level. That may be millennia or tens of millennia into the future. And then a galactic civilization, which is a type 3. It harnesses the energy of its entire galaxy. It's able to control billions of star systems, and we're not remotely close. There, uh, the Kardashev scale has had some speculative add-ons for anyone who is of interest. There's a Type 4, a supergalactic civilization that uses energy across multiple galaxies. It may manipulate galactic clusters, dark energy, and allows civilization spans enormous distances. There's Type 5, which is a multiverse civilization, operates across multiple universes, requires physics beyond known science, and has access to parallel universes or space-time domains. There's Part 6, universe creating civilization. It can create entire universes, designs physical laws and constraints, and reality engineering capability. And then Type 7, a meta reality civilization. It exists beyond physical reality itself. It controls all possible universes, all timelines, and mathematical realities. And it's often described as a godlike intelligence and speculative philosophy. And these are speculative. The only ones that Kardashev developed are the first three. Now, in terms of where we stand as humanity, it's been estimated that we're at zero point 0.7. I don't know if we're quite yet there. I've heard hypotheses that state that humans need peace on Earth before we will be offered an opportunity at at the table of the Galactic Federation, and I see this to be an inevitability if we don't destroy the Earth. That peace is inevitable if given enough time. And the reason why I say that, if we study civilizations on Earth of the past when they would do exploring, they would need to have peace in the home country before they would have necessarily the ability to have exploration teams and set up colonies and such. And the same is true on Earth, that we're not going to be able to dedicate the energy and the materials and resources to space exploration if we are warring here on Earth.
But it
And
seems like the powers that be want us warring, and what they do is they create resets, whether it's through weather modification, it could be ice ages, it could be Agenda 2030, it could be, Mandela effects, it could be all these things. So that's what I wonder, how we're going to get beyond that,
well,
as far as
so
them controlling us.
certainly, and those are important discussions to have at a micro level. In terms of space exploration and such, those are macro ideas. So I'm saying before the year 3000, I think that perhaps we'll have some element of peace on Earth. If we study what alien abductees have stated, that generally they're the abductors.
Oh, now I'm hearing that you do have an echo again. One of the questions is, did you know you had an echo on your end, and you were fading in and out there for a minute?
I'm not aware of that. I
Okay. So what
just
I'm hearing about the abductions, that's part of why they want to hybridize us. It's kind of like they want to mix DNA and things, sort of like to get. I compare it to like a perfect pH, so we can all get along, like a synthesizing of the species. Is that what you see? Why they want to do it, to get their DNA? I mean, not all of it's good because it dumbs us down, and then the dumbing down that gets us into bringing in the whole Anunnaki piece, because what we are now, I think, is we are dumbed down from our original 12 stranded and beyond DNA from these other races, and they're not grays, by the way, the founder races.
so there's a lot to unpack with that. The idea that we may have had some type of um, DNA alterations is consistent with what Bob Lazar was briefed on at S4, Site 4 of Area 51. Within his disclosure, his whistleblowing in the late 1980s, he stated that aliens treat Earth like a zoo or like in a large experiment, a long term experiment, and that human DNA has been altered at least 65 times. which is consistent with what you have said. And so we actually have some type of guided evolution as opposed to the traditional type of evolution that many times we've studied within the scientific realm. This would explain some of the development that we have in terms of the immense amount of evolution and
Uh-oh, you're frozen. Oh no. And which I'm going to say this, which will take us back to the beginning, which was let us make God in our image, which is the Elohim. And he's frozen, so he might have to call back in. I don't know. Are you there? Oh no.
like that exist.
Okay, you cut out and I segued to because I didn't hear you, and I said that takes us back to the beginning of in the biblical test that's like American, not the Torah. In Genesis, it says, "Let us make God in our image," which is the Elohim. So to all go down that old train with the Anunnaki and who when the sons of God mated with the daughters and found them fair, the Nephilim and all that stuff.
Okay, certainly. So, firstly, are the Anunnaki mentioned in the Bible? Let's get to that.
Yeah,
Not in a direct named way. For those who don't know, Anunnaki is an Akkadian word that means those of royal blood or those who came down from heaven to earth. It's specific to Mesopotamian texts, Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian, and the Hebrew Bible does not mention them
there's
as
the
a group.
Anakim though. That what is that?
That certainly is different, and we can get. I mean, we can certainly get to that. Um,
John. Yeah.
so uh, I do have the opportunity, if you'd like to review all of these different terms that we may hear. But as we have studied, the Anakim are a race of giants and the
Giant.
descendants of Anak, and they
Could
inhabited the
be Anunnaki though, because you're dealing with different languages here. You're dealing with Sumerian tablets as opposed to the Torah. Or could it be the same things?
anything certainly could be possible. Generally, they're considered separate. Um, the Anakim inhabited a southern hill in Canaan near Hebron, and they were much taller and warlike, or at least had that type of reputation, and intimidated the ancient Israelites, and certainly shaped the uh, the the uh, the biblical narrative of the Exodus. In terms of the Anunnaki, um, this is uh, they're not mentioned directly in the Bible, unlike the Anakim. No Hebrew word corresponds directly to Anunnaki. There's no biblical passage referring to this group of deities. However, the reason why people think there is a connection, there's a gods or divine council parallel. The Bible does not describe does the Bible does describe a heavenly council of divine beings, and you referenced this earlier. Now, some of these words are also words that within Orthodox Judaism we use for God. So I need to be very careful. And so I want to preface this by saying this is all for educational purposes, and I may distort the names slightly to be able to for religious purposes. So the first term that you used, and I'm going to break up the word. It's Elo and then Him, which I will call Elohim. Uh,
Okay.
this is a form related to the God that's spelled E and then L, which means God, and the translation is usually God or gods or divine beings. And then there's the B'nai Ha Elohim, but some people may say Ha Elo and then Elo, Ha Elo and then Him. And this is the sons of God or divine beings. These appear in Genesis 6 as the sons of God and the daughters of humans, and then also Job 1 and 2. Uh,
But it is plural. That's what I want to get across. It's plural. It's not one.
that's generally thought of as correct, yes.
Yeah.
And so there's a parallel idea. Much of at least Jewish study is from ancient developments. And while some people may use a term as plural, other people may consider that to be singular. And eventually, the monotheistic um, basis of Judaism would take its form, but it was not um, immediate. If you look at the text, that many different names of God were developed, and then also some terms may be like Elohim in a plural sense as being the um, the God or gods or divine beings, but that might not always have been in reference to God. So the idea of the Anunnaki as being a divine council of God um, is certainly prevalent. And in biblical text, there's an Elohim council, a divine court under one supreme God. But these are generally considered to be separate religious systems, not shared entities. Now, within the Genesis flood parallel, there are some similarities that exist between Mesopotamian tradition. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, for those who don't know, this is
Zacharization.
the
This is how we know him. On Coast to Coast, you probably heard Zacharization.
most certainly, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So the Epic of Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh is a legendary king, and there's a flood story, and there is the Atrasis myth, human destruction, and then a flood narrative. Then we have the biblical tradition, of course, with Noah's flood in Genesis. They both share a global flood narrative and a divine decision to reset humanity and a chosen survivor. However, the Bible does not use the Mesopotamian deity names, and the Anunnaki are not involved in the biblical flood story. So there are some other later traditions, more modern. Some modern writers try to link the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, and the sons of God passages, but academically, the Nephilim are not identified with the Anunnaki in ancient texts. These are separate traditions that developed independently. Now, with that, let's go into the Nephilim a little bit. So,
I have a question before you do. I just want to ask you this because we're talking about gods. Who do you think it was the God that appeared to Moses in the burning bush? That scenario. I know, I think it's possibly Yahweh. I think. I don't remember. But so is that a separate entity, say, from Jehovah? Because I've not heard it explained from, say, a Jewish Kabbalistic perspective.
most certainly, those are similar names of what we consider to be Hashem, the name. So we don't pronounce those names within Orthodox Judaism, but yes, that's the God of Abraham in the Hebrew Bible.
But what do you think it was? Do you think it took the shape of like a plasma orb? What do you think this burning thing was? Do you think it was like plasma fire or plasma something? I mean, off the record, not from a Jewish perspective, but from you, what do you feel it was?
Sure. If you want to call it a plasma ball, I wouldn't, different than what I saw, but some type of transcendent physical being, if somebody wanted to consider it that, people are allowed to interpret things in any way possible. Lightning would be something that would be, I think, an apt description, especially with the writing of the tablets. But generally, within mainstream orthodoxy, we think of God as being incorporeal, meaning not having a body, and thus wouldn't be described as having any kind of human form. If people wanted to consider it as being an energy form, that is more in line with how I would
Right. I
understand
mean,
it.
taking a form for a moment, like coming out of the internal, eternal realms into the creation realm to bring forth those tablets or whatever in that moment as a plasma figure.
If
That doesn't
people
make
wanted,
it. Yeah.
yeah, some people may call it plasma, other people may call it lightning, other people may call it energy. I'm okay with all of these. However, it uh, allows you to better interpret the story. So long as we stay away from it being of human form, then generally the answer is we don't know. We don't have a good enough description of exactly what it was. So energy is what I'd be comfortable with describing it as.
So, who are the fallen angels and the Nephilim in your perspective, and
Absolutely.
and in the realm of your studies?
Absolutely. So the Nephilim are the fallen ones. Generally, comes from the um, Nephilim comes from the Hebrew term nephal, which means to fall. The possible translations are fallen ones, those who have fallen, those who cause others to fall, violent ones, and then later translations are giants. Um, so we have the uh, the reference of the Nephilim twice within the Hebrew Bible. This occurs in Genesis. The reference is the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward, when the sons of God came to the daughters of man and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men of old, men of renown. Uh, so there's this is the first biblical appearance of the Nephilim. It appears immediately before the flood narrative. It does not explicitly define what the Nephilim were, and interpretation certainly depends heavily on the surrounding verses. Now, the second occurrence happens in the book of Numbers, and and there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, from the Nephilim, and we were in our own sight like grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. So Anak, this is what we had discussed earlier, the Anakim, the descendants of Anak. This is the second and final appearance of the Nephilim. It was spoken by the Israelite spies. It helped. It creates a chronological tension with Genesis, and it is often interpreted as exaggeration or comparison. But the major interpretive question that exists with the Nephilim: how do they exist after the flood, or do they exist after the flood? So Genesis places them before the flood, Numbers reference them after the flood. The text does not resolve the issue. Classical explanations is that there was exaggeration. The spies used legendary language to describe fear. There's a comparison theory that the Anakim were compared to the legendary Nephilim. There's a descendant theory that later groups preserved the name or reputation. The traditional Jewish rabbinic approach is that the sons of God means rulers or nobles, and that the Nephilim were violent human elites. This preserves strict monotheism, it avoids angelic reproduction, and it focuses on human moral corruption. There is a second temple tradition. Some ancient Jewish writings interpret the sons of God as angels, and the Nephilim were giant offspring. Uh, this is found in Enochic literature. It's influential, but not universal within Judaism. And then we move into the book of Enoch. So this expands on
And we have
Genesis
a
6.
question I want you to address before you get into Enoch. Can you see the question? I figure the word Anunnaki was just someone adding to Anku or Ankh, which is different than the Ankh in, I don't know if I'm saying that right, in the Egyptian tradition.
Egyptian.
Yeah, the key to life between spirit and physical. Anunnaki's a distraction. I think Anunnaki has some meaning that the gods that came from the heaven or something. I can't remember exactly what it means.
So what we can
But
do
what I
is
want to
just
know is this whole thing of I don't know if you get into chimeras and if they were creating, because what I kind of feel is what they were doing is they were like mixing us the DNA of the higher council gods or angelic realm. I don't know if you can prove this biblically or not, but this is kind of what I gather from my studies, and mixing it with a form of Homo sapien, which was, I think, Homo erectus or Homo something, which was actually dumbing, or, Cro-Magnon man, those, it was actually dumbing us down from what we were, because we were more in light bodies before, and this physicalized us.
okay.
I'm
So we've
sure
got
you.
two questions here. Let's address the YouTube question, and then we can get into Chimera.
Okay, yeah,
So the idea of the Anunnaki, it's usually understood as referring to Mesopotamian deities. The name is often analyzed as relating to An or Anu, the sky god, and
right.
the ending referring to a group of divine beings. The exact original Sumerian meaning is debated, but it is not derived from a known word, Anku, meaning key to life. Now there's the Ankh, the Egyptian symbol meaning life. It is a different language and tradition from the Mesopotamian Anuna or Anunnaki. The key of life idea comes from Egyptian symbolism, not Sumerian. There is also a Mesopotamian word family involving An, which means sky or heaven, and the divine concepts, which may be why some people notice a spiritual connection. Uh, there is a bridge between realms, though. I mean, these are all people within the same 1,000 mile radius, and so there was definitely some connection between them. The Egyptian Ankh usually represents vitality, divine human connection. The Mesopotamian gods is an interaction between divine and human realms, and then the Enoch traditions are heavenly beings crossing into the human world. So those themes generally occur across all the cultures. The idea of the distraction that was referenced is also that some researchers of mythology do discuss. Sometimes there's a modern focus on the Anunnaki as aliens that can overshadow the actual ancient material, which is more about cosmic order, kingship, creation, divine authority, and humanity's relationship with the gods. So a historically grounded way to frame that idea from the an excellent question in the comments is that the Anunnaki may be less important as beings who came here, but more important as symbols of the ancient human attempt to describe the connection between the divine, the cosmos, and human existence. And then, as to your question, the chimera, generally, in mythology, as I understand, it would be like a fire breathing Greek monster with a lion's head, a goat's body, and a serpent's tail. Um, and there are also ways that it's been described in biology as an animal or plant that contains two or more different sets of DNA. And then, certainly in genetics, a person who absorbed their twin in the womb results in two distinct DNA profiles. So the idea of a chimera um, can certainly have the mythology sense or the modern biological sense. The you were asking what specifically about the chimera?
I was well, I didn't know what else to call it about if they're mixing DNA, like because another species can't. Let's put it this way: can a fallen angel actually have sex with a human woman? Maybe not, but they can make something possibly in a test tube, or they can do it through portals, or they can, people are talking about CERN. I believe there was ancient technologies, and some of what we're hearing about may be time kind of repeats itself, and some of these aliens could be us in the future, in the past, like Michio Kaku talks about. There's so many things we just don't know.
That's absolutely correct. And Missy, I think that's an accurate and apt observation that we may not know. In terms of could some type of extraterrestrial being have relations or impregnate a human woman and create a hybrid? Absolutely. Could a woman have her eggs or ovum extracted and create a hybrid being
Yes,
off world? I think that's possible too. The important aspect to, I think, not forget is that with sufficiently advanced technology, anything is possible.
but it may
So
not
when
be in the traditional way. Here, we're hearing this in a traditional way. Like, I'll give an example: wheels within wheels of a chariot. I mean, they wrote things in the time that they were in. So if we hear this with, Enoch, what does that mean? To me, it sounds like a UFO. That's what it sounds like.
Most certainly. Okay, so we can certainly get into that discussion. So usually this is the wheel within a wheel vision that is approximately around 600 before the
Or
common era.
Elijah. I meant
Pardon me.
Elijah. Yeah, Elijah. That was
Well,
Elijah.
this is the biblical book of Ezekiel. If you're talking about the wheel within a wheel,
Oh,
um,
Ezekiel. I mean,
that
Ezekiel.
absolutely. So this occurred around, historians think around 593 before the Common Era, and it was a vision that occurred during the Babylonian exile. Some modern UFO theorists claim that this vision describes advanced technology or spacecraft. Mainstream interpretations view the vision as symbolic. So some basic facts in Ezekiel chapter 1. It contains one of the most detailed visionary descriptions of in the ancient world. The vision became one of the foundations to later Jewish mysticism and certainly Kabbalistic understanding. The wheel within a wheel is one of the most analyzed images in all of biblical literature, and many ancient readers understood the account as a supernatural vision rather than a technical report. So we have Ezekiel. His name in Hebrew means God strengthens, and he was a Jewish prophet active during the 6th century before the Common Era. He was likely born around 622 of the Common Era, and he belonged to a priestly family of Judah. He was taken into Babylonian captivity in around 597 before the Common Era. We have the Judeans, the people of Judah, the population of the kingdom of Judah, and many were deported to Babylonia after military defeat. We have Nebuchadnezzar, who his Akkadian name is uh, connects the name Nabu, Babylonian god of wisdom, in Kudiri, air, and Usur, protect. So his name literally means, O Nabu, protect the air. He was the king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire from 605 to around 562 before the Common Era. He conquered Jerusalem in 597 of the before the Common Era and 586 before the Common Era. And he's responsible for the deportations of Judeans. Ezekiel is one of the few biblical prophets whose ministry can be dated with unusual precision. He lived among exiles rather than in Jerusalem. His writings contain more visionary imagery than almost any other biblical prophet, and his priestly background may explain the strong emphasis on divine glory and sacred symbolism. So now let's get to this wheel within a wheel. What is it? He describes giant wheels beside heavenly beings. Each wheel appears to contain another wheel intersecting it. The wheels can move in any direction without turning. He also describes living creatures. 4 supernatural beings accompanied the wheels, each possessing 4 faces and 4 wings. There was a divine throne. It was positioned above the creatures and the wheels, and it supports a radiant divine figure. There's the idea that the glory of God was a visible manifestation of the divine presence. The wheels were covered with eyes. The wheels move in perfect coordination with the living creatures, and the entire structure functions as a heavenly throne chariot. Similar throne imagery appears in other ancient Near Eastern cultures as well, but this is one of the major connections that people make to UFOs in the Bible. There are some others. If you'd like, we can certainly address those. And like, is the term UFO actually mentioned in the Bible, or something along those lines? And generally, it is not, but some people do have some interpretations as to what occurred. So within the Hebrew Bible, we're talking about Tanakh. This is Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, meaning our Hebrew Bible canon. There is divine throne imagery, which we just discussed somewhat, angelic messengers, hybrid or ambiguous beings, fiery ascension events, structured celestial hosts, complex visionary systems, especially like what we're talking about in Ezekiel. So Genesis, the earliest ambiguous divine human narrative. There's a key passage. Certainly, the sons of God saw the daughters of man, that they were fair, and there were giants on earth in those days. The sons of God, these divine beings, which we discussed, were the Nephilim. Then within Deuteronomy, we have the idea of when you see the sun, the moon, and the stars, even all the host of heaven. There is an idea of celestial bodies described as an organized host. It reflects ancient cosmological worldview. It reflects an ancient cosmological worldview. It's not described as biological beings or spacecraft, but it indicates a structured hierarchical view of the heavens. Now, in the second book of Kings, there's a fiery ascension event. This occurs. There appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. And I think this is maybe what you were referencing with
Yeah,
Elijah.
right.
Absolutely. So
I've got so many things in my mind at one time. I'm trying to, without notes. I'm not doing that.
absolutely, and they both start with E. No big deal. Prophetic ascension. This is a prophetic ascension narrative. The fire and whirlwind imagery signal divine presence. There's no mechanical structure, device, or craft described, but it does share a thematic pattern with other non-death departure figures. Then there's Ezekiel, the complex visionary system, and it's the most detailed text. So basically, there's a whirlwind and cloud approach. There's a fire within the cloud, four living beings, four-faced anatomy, interlocking wheels, radiant expanse, throne above the expanse, and a human-like figure on the throne. So there's a key being the Hayot, which are the living beings. These are the four faces. There's a human, which is intelligence. There's a lion, which generally is a Hebrew word aryeh, which references strength and kingship. There's an ox, which is shore, which is stability and labor, and then an eagle, nesher, which is sky and height. And I should say, human is the intelligence aspect about this. The four faces were not necessarily separate beings, but a simultaneous multi-face structure. There's a symbolic representation of the domains of creation, and it reflects.
Right. Which also connects into the grid work, which I want to address, not to cut you off, circle back around to that, but there was a question way back that Julia asked about stargates, and does any of this tie into stargates with the ascension and them taking off and leaving from certain places? You can address that with.
Absolutely. So this idea reflects the ancient composite throne iconography traditions, and each creature is unified and doesn't have necessarily anatomically separate parts. Now, the wheels part, this is Ezekiel 1:15 through 16. We have the Ophanim, which means wheels, a wheel within a wheel. It's described as self-moving. It's coordinated with living beings above them. They contain a spirit of or movement. The idea of spirit is a term, ruach, and multi-directional motion without turning. The throne is from Ezekiel 126. Above the firmament was the likeness of a throne and the likeness of a human upon it. The entire structure is explicitly likeness, which is the visionary framing of it. It's not described as material architecture. There's a central text for later mystical systems, which is known as the Merkava tradition, and most detailed symbolic system. It's the most detailed symbolic system within prophetic literature. In terms of the idea of a stargate, uh, I think it's important to define what a stargate is. And so, uh, if we were to take the traditional idea of maybe like a teleportation, um, a mode to be able to teleport, that's many times what it's considered. So maybe it creates a portal between two distant locations in space. There's an ancient meaning of this, um, usually a symbolic doorway between the realms, earth and the heavens, or the physical and spiritual, human and divine, ordinary reality and higher consciousness. People often connect this idea with ancient temples, pyramids, sacred geometry, celestial alignments, myths of gods descending from the sky. Some uh, Enoch's visions have been described as this. The Mesopotamian ziggurats, certainly as mountains connecting heaven and earth. Even the Great Pyramid of Giza and its shafts have been interpreted as this. Now, the idea in terms of perhaps aliens, some modern theories claim ancient civilizations had literal portals or technology given by advanced beings, sometimes connected to the Anunnaki idea. This is popular in some alternative history circles, but generally there's no accepted mainstream archaeological evidence that ancient cultures possessed physical stargate technology, but there is a deeper symbolic idea. The interesting part is that many cultures share the same pattern. There's a boundary that exists between the worlds. A special person or object or location crosses it, and knowledge or power comes back. So, some examples of this occur with Enoch ascending to heaven, Elijah being taken upward, shamans traveling between realms, gods descending from sky in some ancient myths, heroes entering the underworld and returning. So, when whether someone means a literal portal, like we would see in some type of media, or a spiritual symbol, Stargate could represent both of those. It's basically a device or a location or perhaps the way to travel from one place to another, usually something like a portal between two distant locations.
And here's a comment from Tennessee, Kentucky, Bigfoot. Hey, TKB and everyone in the house. One thing we found out the other day is our dimension balances water with another dimension, Southern Cross. The Ankh only shows the loop on this side. Technically, the true Ankh is an infinite sign. Well, that's like with a lot of symbols. The true symbol, you could get into the Star of David. You could get into the true swastika before it got distorted, which is an Indo-European sign. There's a lot of these things. You can the one in Norse tradition, I can't think of what it's called, that has all these. Do you have any comments on any of these symbols?
Yes, this is all sacred geometry, and the ancient peoples were always trying to either transcend the real world into some other type of portal. They were obsessed with the infinite, they obsessed with power and energy, and the interpretation is that they used this type of symbology to be able to describe that which they desired. And all of the examples that you gave are perhaps examples of this. And we use them to this day. So we're not much different, even in corporate logos and such. Many of these ancient symbols are utilized in the modern age.
What do you think? Because they've been talking about CERN and hadron colliders and Mandela effects. So we'll shift gears a little bit. And then you had brought up quantum computers. I mean, lately, I think Elon Musk, back to him again, he's talking about summoning the demons, something about, and then these data centers, opening portals, Mandela effects, quantum D-wave computers. And if you heard that guy years ago saying, oh, it's like bowing to an alien god, with CERN, with HARP, with all, what do you think all this is creating?
It's an excellent question. There is an argument that CERN itself is a underground project. For those that don't know what we're referencing, this is the super collider in Switzerland that, to my knowledge, is going to close until 2029 to have some renovations, which is somewhat interesting to me. Um,
Interesting.
Most certainly. But it's the largest particle collider in the world. I want to say that there's a scientific answer that's given, but then there are also alternative theories. I don't know what I believe, but I will tell you what I've heard. I have heard that CERN is a place that perhaps is a center core for the deep state, that there it may have connections to some type of underground tunnel system, that it may be used as a cover for the intelligence agency, that you can generally say that you're an engineer and people don't press you on the issue too much, especially if you say, oh, they're an engineer at CERN, because then you can really travel the world unobstructed, and always be able to give the answer that you're an engineer at CERN. This is a similar cover story that many people gave with the Manhattan Project during the development of atomic weapons in New Mexico. Whether or not this is true, I've also heard some other interesting theories on the matter, that there may be some kind of connection between CERN and Lake Geneva, and a some type of layer. I've heard before. Whether this is true or not, I don't know. I'm doubtful of anything that I've heard before I see some evidence. But I've heard that alpine lakes are very deep, much deeper than many people think, and that there may have been a tunnel system that has created some kind of base at the on the floor of Lake Geneva that that there's a connection to um, CERN as well, and so it would be easy for people to be able to meet, perhaps in the intelligence world or some type of even off-world entity, by just giving the argument that they are going to CERN. Um, I've also heard the idea of time travel and CERN, and that it could create artificial black holes that could perhaps envelop the entire world. There's not a lot known that's publicly available in terms of many of the clandestine programs that are occurring at CERN. But if time travel is going to occur anywhere, or even any evidence of such, it is my thought that CERN would be probably at the epicenter of this, because it's the largest particle collider in the world. Um, and you had mentioned earlier as well the idea of time travel. Do you want to get into that?
Yeah, I do. I want to, before that, I want to talk about this. back in 2009, I think it was December of 2009, there was something called the Norway Spiral that a lot of people, it went
Yeah.
viral and everybody was watching it. And many people said, yes, it's a missile, but it also was a spiritual event that opened portals, and not necessarily in a positive way, with beings called the Borgia coming from the, either, I don't know if it was the this according to Ashiana Dean's work, or who goes by Iyasha now, from the Wisadek or Wisadrak matrix. And I noticed at that time was speeding up as we were going towards 2012. There was more um, galactic activity. I mean, to me, there was a time when a lot of orbs you would see. I would get so many photographs of orbs. Now I hardly ever get orb photographs. And that was around the time that I got my third generation night vision goggles. And I was doing UFO sky watch and seeing all kinds of weird anomalies in the sky, like jellyfish craft, orb things giving birth to each other. And you see that now, and you see a lot of things, and most of, I think, what we see actually is military. But back then there was some other thing as we were gearing up towards 2012. And I really do think there was a connection with this Norway spiral. I really do.
It was quite interesting. So this is an event I believe that happened in toward the end of 2009. Some people stated that it was a Stargate, like we talked about earlier, because it really did look like a Stargate into the sky. It was basically a blue and white spiral that appeared above Norway, and the spiral seemed to expand with a bright center and huge circular ring. Many people filmed it, and theories spread about UFOs and wormholes, stargates, secret experiments, ancient technology. The official explanation was less mysterious, of course, as it always is, that it was a Russian missile test from the Russian Navy that failed, and the missile was launched from a submarine in the White Sea, and the failure caused fuel or exhaust to escape while the missile was spinning. The sunlight illuminated the expanding spiral plume high in the atmosphere, creating the effect. Basically, a spinning rocket plus leaking fuel or exhaust plus high altitude sunlight plus cold atmosphere equaled a giant spiral in the sky. However, it looked so unnatural because it really looked like a portal. There was circular geometry, a glowing center, an expanding ring, and it was perfectly spiral. And that's what leads me to think it perhaps may have been more than just that Russian test. Um,
I
and
Yes.
it was almost like a door in the sky that would have been described in mythology. And while it's not evidence of a literal stargate, it is a good example of how perhaps event, a real physical event, could resemble an ancient idea about the gateways between the worlds. And imagine if we were ancient people and we saw that, we would think that it was certainly
Or
something.
creating a wormhole, I think it is. But here's a comment from Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot. CERN's last confirmed completed collision runs at least June 14th, 2026, the final heavy ion data taking period. Do you know anything about this?
So that's consistent to what I know.
I
Uh,
haven't looked at CERN lately, so yeah.
so as I understand, CERN is shutting down for 3 years after that collision, um, and it's not shutting down permanently, but the Large Hadron Collider is scheduled for a major planned shutdown called Long Shutdown 3 (LS3). So it's 2026 run is the final data taking period before this period, and it's planned around this summer. And then um, from there, there's going to be some major um, maintenance upgrades and preparation for what's called the high luminosity LHC phrase that's directly from CERN. It's interesting though that they would need to shut down for so long or all of it. It seems like maybe you could work on it in pieces, but apparently you cannot. And but yeah, as I understand, the final um, run occurs this summer. It will close down mid 2026 or so, and then start up again in 2029.
I got to go to Arecibo in Puerto Rico back in, I think it was in 2013, and I know that closed down in 2020. You have to wonder, what goes on at some of these places. But yeah, let's get into the whole time travel phenomena, and we were also going to cover the moon landings, although we all know about the moon.
Yeah, most certainly. So, just to give some ideas, and we've been talking about myths and religion, philosophy, and such. Ancient religions and myths already contain time distortion ideas. In Hindu tradition, stories describe characters visiting different ages of time, where time flows differently for gods versus humans. Similar ideas appear in Buddhist cosmology and various folklore traditions. Philosophers later questioned time itself. Early thinkers debated whether time is absolute or relative, but no scientific model existed yet. The first clear literary time travel statement in a modern complex, the first not recognizable modern time travel story is the 1895 H.G. Wells book The Time Machine. This is the first major work where a machine is used to intentionally travel into the future. It introduced a mechanical time machine, forward time travel as a scientific concept, a structured explanation of future evolution. This is widely considered the birth of modern time travel fiction. The scientific foundation, the real physics, begin with special relativity that was developed around 1905 by Albert Einstein. It introduced the theory of relativity. The key idea is that time is not absolute. Time slows down at high speeds with time dilation. This means forward time travel is real and proven in small amounts. Examples: astronauts age slightly less than people on Earth due to velocity plus gravity effects. Then there's the advent of general relativity in 1915, where gravity bends space time. Strong gravity equals slower time, meaning if you are near a black hole, time dilation becomes extreme. This also supports real forward time travel. There's theoretical backward time travel as well. So physics allows mathematical possibilities, but not proven reality. The possible mechanisms are wormholes, which are like space-time shortcuts, rotating black holes, known as Kerr black holes, closed time like curves, solutions in Einstein's equations. The problems exist, though. It requires exotic matter not confirmed to exist, instability, which would perhaps collapse instantly, and causality paradoxes. And these are fascinating to me. So, some of the paradoxes why at least backward time travel is hard. There's the grandfather paradox. If you change the past, you might erase yourself. The bootstrap paradox: information or objects loop with no origin. These raise major consistency issues in physics. The main scientific views today, modern physics consensus is that forward time travel is real via relativity. Backward time travel is theoretically possible but unproven and perhaps quite difficult. Most physicists lean toward that nature protects causality. Time travel to the past may be forbidden, but it may not be. But at least utilizing Hawking's chronology protection conjecture, it may have some forbidden aspects. So, in terms of how can we time travel, at least there are some theorized and some speculation on how we can do it. So, of course, what we just referenced, special relativity, traveling near the speed of light causes time to pass more slowly for the traveler. This was proposed by Albert Einstein. Time dilation has been experimentally confirmed. Astronauts age slightly slower than people on Earth. Faster speeds create greater time differences and allows travel into the future, not the past. Then there's general relativity, which we touched on as well, that strong gravity slows time. Massive objects warp space-time. Clocks run slower near strong gravity. GPS satellites must account for the effect. Black holes create extreme time dilation, and the future time travel becomes theoretically possible. There's black hole time dilation, where time slows dramatically near a black hole. This is predicted by general relativity. Extreme gravitational fields affect time. Minutes near a black hole could equal years elsewhere. It's been popularized by the movie Interstellar and other works, but there's no practical method currently existing. Then we have wormholes, which are basically hypothetical shortcuts through space time. sometimes called Einstein-Rosen bridges. They could connect distant locations. They may connect different times. They require exotic material in most models, but these have yet to be observed. There are cosmic strings. So this is a hypothetical defect in space-time. It's been predicted in some cosmological models. They could warp space-time dramatically. They might create closed time-like curves. There's no confirmed detection, and they'd still remain theoretical. There's a Tipler cylinder, which is an infinitely long rotating cylinder. This was proposed by Frank J. Tipler. The rotation bends space-time. It could theoretically permit time loops. It requires impossible engineering, and it's considered impractical. There's Kerr black holes, which are rotating black holes. These were predicted solutions to Einstein's equations. They contain unusual space-time geometries. They may allow closed time-like paths. Internal stability is debated and unproven as time machines. There's closed time-like curves, paths that loop back in time. These are allowed by some relativity solutions. They would return a traveler to an earlier point. They create causality paradoxes. They're extensively studied mathematically, but again, never observed. There are quantum time travel models. These may permit unusual temporal effects. These have been investigated by theoretical physicists. They
Keep
involve
going. Keep going. I'm just taking a
certainly,
look.
absolutely. They involve quantum information. They remain highly speculative. There's no practical technology that exists, and it has not been experimentally demonstrated. There are many worlds timelines. These are changing the past, creating an alternate timeline. So this is based on interpretations of quantum mechanics. It avoids grandfather paradoxes. They're popular in science fiction. They're not experimentally verified and again remain hypothetical. There's cryonic suspension. So this is preserving people for the future. Bodies are frozen after death, intended future renewal, not true time travel, and no human has been revived, but it represents one-way future travel conceptually, and in a similar way, even just sleep from a subjective standpoint is has an argument of some type of time travel by the person who was asleep. Generation ships. So these are multi-generational space voyages. Travelers experience normal time. Descendants reach distant futures. It's been proposed for interstellar travel. No generation ship exists, but it's sometimes called social time travel. There's relativistic starships, near light speed spacecraft, the use of relativistic time dilation. Travelers age slowly. Earth experiences decades or centuries. This is consistent with known physics. It requires enormous energy. There's suspended animation, the reducing biological activity. It's been studied in medicine. It is inspired by hibernating animals. It could preserve travelers. It's not currently capable of long term use, and it is a form of future skipping. There's the simulation theory that reality may be a simulation. This is a popular philosophical idea that time could theoretically be manipulated. There's no supporting evidence. It cannot currently be tested conclusively, and it does remain speculative. There's higher dimensional travel. This is moving through extra dimensions. It appears in some theoretical physics. It's common in science fiction. It could bypass normal space time. There's no evidence for practical use, and it's highly speculative. There's temporal consciousness transfer. This is sending information rather than matter. So this is popular in science fiction. It's the idea that consciousness moves through time, avoiding physical transport issues. No scientific evidence. Again, it's hypothetical. Retrocausality. This is that future events influence past events. It appears in some quantum interpretations. It's studied philosophically. It does not imply human time machines. The evidence remains controversial and it's mostly theoretical. There's the ancient mythological time shifts. Many traditions describe altered time. This does appear in Jewish, Hindu, Celtic, and Buddhist stories. Heroes enter other realms. Different time rates occur, usually symbolic or theological, and these are not scientific claims. And then there are fictional time machines, the mechanical devices used to travel through time. This was introduced in the time machine. They're common in literature and film. It includes vehicles, portals, and devices. Of course, we don't have any real examples yet, and they are fictional concepts. But those are some time travel methods that we can currently hypothesize. And then you also had the question about the moon. Is that correct?
Yeah, and what I was going to comment on, and this is, I missed a little because I just needed a break for a second. Uh, there's also, I feel, interdimensional travel that gets into the whole, when abduction happens, is it happening in the dreams? This might be for a whole other show about that shady area between the realms, and what do you know anything about looking glass technology?
Yeah, I do. We can get into that. So we did discuss higher dimensional travel, moving through extra dimensions. In
Hmm.
terms of looking glass,
So you
uh,
call extra dimension instead of interdimensional?
uh, I think I may have said higher dimensional, but
Higher dimension.
you
Okay.
can use
Any.
any of them are fine. I feel to use.
Yeah.
So if we want to get into the looking glass, I do have an what I feel to be um, just some interesting aspects of it. So if you would um, just bear with me a moment, and I can make some clarifications regarding it.
Okay.
And um, the the idea that there may be something known as a looking glass that is an actual piece of technology. So this is just a fabulous story that I want to go into. I know that some other people may find it interesting as well. So this is the idea of President Eisenhower the Greada
Hmm.
Treaty narrative, and the Looking Glass system. So this is a story, uh, why the story exists in a system. And I want to say this is a narrative. As anything that I've said, there's very little, if no evidence. These are just stories. If anything, we would just be telling a vision or telling an understanding of ancient peoples. But this is a narrative built around the idea that the first contact between humans and non-human intelligence occurred during the Cold War. It There are arguments to be made. Maybe it's been happening for longer periods of time, but perhaps this is the first time that we actually had humans had some type of treaty that was developed. The governments treated it as a national security issue, that contact led to controlled agreements rather than open disclosure, that long term classified programs developed around knowledge gained. And in this work, UFO encounters are not necessarily random events, they represent structured interaction between two technological civilizations. So, the Eisenhower era context, the 1950s were framed as a turning point because nuclear weapons were introduced and created a global existential risk. Aerospace technology advanced extremely quickly. Radar and early warning systems began detecting unknown aerial objects. Within the narrative logic, these conditions made contact more likely or more urgent. Leadership decisions would prioritize stability over transparency. Highly classified channels would be used for sensitive encounters. Now, allegedly, and that's with all of this, I can't emphasize that enough. All of this is alleged. Edwards Air
Right.
Force Base and Holloman Air Force Base had a key role. These bases are central because they are secure, restricted military aerospace facilities. They are already handled experimental aircraft and classified testing. They have large open desert surroundings suitable for controlled operations. The narrative is that Edwards Air Force Base is often framed as an observation or staging site, and Holloman Air Force Base is often framed as a landing or meeting site. The claim sequence pattern was that radar detection of anomalous uh, uh, anomalous craft was occurring. There were military interception attempts, controlled landing arrangements, and then restricted access meetings involving secret or secret meetings involving select officials. The Greada Treaty concept is the idea that there was a technology exchange, basically proportion concepts beyond known aerospace capability, energy generation principles not publicly understood at the time, advanced materials knowledge, biologic in exchange for limited human subject involvement for study the alien abduction phenomenon, medical and genetic observation programs, which is what you were referencing earlier, Missy, with the idea of this hybrid DNA type system.
And they're showing us this in all these shows, all these sci-fi shows
Yes.
show it.
Yes, so that may be an example of predictive programming, allowing
Hmm.
humans to essentially become exposed to these stimuli before they actually occur. So the secrecy framework was strict compartmentalization, no public acknowledgement, and then controlled dissemination within the government. The logic behind it is that humans are technologically asymmetrical compared to the other party. The agreement is framed as pragmatic survival diplomacy rather than equality. The internal government structure in the narrative is a major part of the story. Is this institutional separation? The claims include the creation of special access programs outside normal oversight. Only a small number of officials have full knowledge. Intelligence agencies operate compartmentally. The outcome of the narrative is that knowledge is fragmented across departments. No single person has full visibility. Long-term secrecy becomes self-reinforcing. The technology acceleration theme is a key supporting idea that in post 1950s technological growth is that it's unusually rapid. Areas often cited are aerospace propulsion improvements, satellite reconnaissance development, stealth technology emergence, computing and semiconductor expansion. Some breakthroughs are attributed to direct knowledge transfer, reverse engineered of recovered materials, and indirect inspiration for anomalous data. Now, this glass concept, which is absolutely fascinating to me, this is a presented as a later stage development in the same system. The idea is that there's a high level predictive modeling system designed to simulate future outcomes of complex systems. It uses advanced computation far beyond standard model tools. The claimed capabilities are the projection of geopolitical outcomes, simulation of timeline branching scenarios, identification of stability and collapse points in systems. It is not necessarily magic foresight, it is extreme scale predictive computation. The physical interpretation variations, the system is described inconsistently in different accounts. There's version one, it's a mirror interface, a reflective surface used as a symbolic interface for viewing outputs. There's version two, a black box system, a sealed computational device with classified internal architecture. There's version three, an AI simulation platform, a disturbing computing system running large scale predictive models. The shared theme is, though, that it functions as a reality modeling interface, not a conventional machine. The Looking Glass name meaning, there are a few possible meanings. It's a tool for observing alternate outcomes, a boundary between present reality and modeled futures, a metaphor for reflective simulation rather than literal optics. The institutional storage claims, and this has always been fascinating to me as well. I'm a Freemason, and there's always been some kind of Freemasonic lore to this, that the Looking Glass is stored in this with the Scottish Rite Association. Some versions of the narrative link the system to symbolic institutions. The claims include sensitive systems or archives that are housed in elite ceremonial buildings. Specifically, it's been alleged that this would be the House of the Temple in Washington, D.C., is sometimes mentioned. These institutions represent continuity, secrecy, and long term custody. They serve as symbolic anchors for hidden knowledge systems. I do want to say, though, at least within my lodge, none of this has ever been discussed. So if it's going on, it's perhaps in some other lodge with which I have no connection.
It's
The
way above 33rd degree, is what I've heard. All the stuff that goes on way
I've
above it.
I've heard these arguments as well.
Yeah.
So the idea of a breakaway capability concept, there's another key idea that there's a long-term separation of technological development. The structure is that highly classified programs operate independently of public science. The funding and oversight are hidden through layered contracting systems. The projects continue across administrations without interruption, and the result is parallel technological development, uneven public understanding of actual capability levels. I've heard that this if it does exist, this looking glass is basically a something at which you can look that can tell you the events that will happen in the future. And I've always thought to myself, if you can have any closed system, whether it's the universe or even the solar system, and you could know the position and velocity, which violates the Heisenberg uh, theory, but if somehow you could get around some of the difficulties of knowing the velocity and position of a particle, you could basically run a simulation in that closed system to know every outcome that may potentially occur. And that's the idea of what the looking glass is. And I just find it to be absolutely fascinating. And one other thing that you had mentioned is Apollo. Is it okay to get into that?
Yeah, I have one question before that. If you could travel to any point in time that was available to you, where would you want to go see?
Oh, an excellent question. Can I travel forward or backward, or both, or
Either
anything
or.
that?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, perhaps to a point where the idea of a time traveling craft is created, because then I could, whenever I want, travel
Uh-uh.
to any.
Hold
You
on a
get
second. No, 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 no. You keep talking. My cat's
sure.
doing something he's not supposed to.
Absolutely, no worries. So the idea, it may seem kind of a creative idea, but I would time travel to whatever time that I could get a time machine, because then I could time travel whenever I want, wherever I wanted, either to the forward or backward. But if we don't have that ability, um, I would like to perhaps be able to time travel to a time when humanity may be able to delay or perhaps avoid indefinitely the idea of death, because then I could be able to live as a android, an avatar, a cyborg, a cybernetic being, a clone of myself, a robot, an ethereal being, whatever I want to be, for as long as that I want, and so long as I enjoy it. But I would probably say if I were going to go in the future, that's when I would go. As for the past, it'd be nice to just go back to 2009 and just buy all the Bitcoin that would be needed, and immediately be the wealthiest person on earth, or within a decade or so. But without having that kind of foreknowledge, um, I don't know if I would very much like many ancient times. They seem to be quite brutal and barbaric. Um, but I I very much would also like probably 1950s California. Seems to be an age of uh, for some people, not for all people. There's certainly a lot of segregation and things that were occurring then, but it seems to be a time where the American future seemed bright, where the opportunity for the golden age of development seemed on the being at the precipice of that. The discussion of the space race was occurring, and it just seemed to be a more innocent time for some people. But again, not for all people. So if I had to go back in the past, it might not necessarily be all that far back. 1950s California seems quite potentially quite enjoyable. In the future, if I could go at any time, it would be a time when I could get into a time machine. What about you, Missy? What would you choose?
Oh my God. I think when you talk about as far as Bitcoin, go back to the beginning of Google, and if you knew what was going to happen with the internet, right, or looking forward. But I would probably like to go back to the time of King Arthur myself, because I feel this connection with the Druids, and even before that with the Northern Lights and the Polarian beings and the Hyperborean. So whether you look at King Arthur as Atlantis, or you look at King Arthur as going back to Hyperborean times, I kind of have a resonance with that because of my ancestry, which is mostly German, but Norwegian, Scott, Irish, English. So and the future, I don't know, because I don't know what's going to happen here. I mean, look, I try to remote view some of these things, like, and let's, instead of talking too far into the future, how about we talk about the moon first, because we know the hunk of junk that they sent up there, that didn't do it, and yet you know, Pink Floyd had that song "See on the Dark Side of the Moon," and we know there's bases on the moon. You know, Richard C. Hoagland has talked about that face on Mars, and you know the stuff going on with the moon, and that the moon's hollow. I'll just let you get into it. I'm focused on him a little bit because he's doing something he's not supposed to be doing. That's
Absolutely.
Arthur, which
All
is
right.
King Arthur and Thor. You
Okay.
saw me hold him up when he was
Absolutely.
behaving himself.
So I'd like to first say, what evidence do we have that we did go to the moon? I think that's important, and then we will have any type of evidence that we didn't. So the big thing, and something that for many years I had faith in, were the retroreflectors. Retroreflectors, basically laser ranging experiments. Astronauts allegedly placed special mirror arrays on the lunar surface during the Apollo missions, Apollo 11, 14, and 15. Allegedly, these are still used today. Observatories on Earth bounce lasers off them to measure the Earth moon distance with centimeter precision. The experiment is called lunar laser ranging. It requires precise placement by humans on the moon. It's still independently used by observatories worldwide, and allegedly, it's not it cannot be replicated by unmanned probes of the 1960s era. I will say this though: I have heard the skeptics say that the moon is reflective enough that these types of retroreflectors are not necessary. Nor were they necessary, and there's even evidence that the Russians in the late 1950s, early 1960s were able to do this before anyone had gone to the moon. So, and I want to say for this topic, it's near and dear to my heart. I'm very passionate about it, but I want to leave uh, the options open for the audience, because I don't want to necessarily um I don't want to necessarily be biased in one way or another. That's why I'm going to give both sides. The next piece of evidence that's given is that the Apollo landing sites are visible from orbit. Modern spacecraft has photographed Apollo landing sites. NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter has captured descent stages, astronaut walking paths, equipment left behind. These images show disturbances in hardware consistent with human missions. I will say this: I've seen them all, and if you can make that out, that's fine. It looks like a white pixel to me. My vision is certainly lacking. I don't have the best vision by any means, but the pictures are open to interpretation in my mind. The next are independent tracking by multiple countries. During the Apollo missions, the Soviet Union tracked Apollo spacecraft trajectories. Other countries with radio astronomy capabilities also monitored the signals. There's the argument that the USSR was a direct competitor in the space race and had no incentive to validate the US claims. Their tracking confirmed translunar injection and lunar orbit insertion. There is some argument, though, to be made that the USSR was perhaps bribed to keep their mouth shut on this topic, or perhaps given incentives. I believe there were some major agricultural incentives that were given during a time in the Soviet Union when grain was scarce. Um, and then there was also perhaps an agreement, because the Soviet Union may have had some malfeasance that went on with Yuri Gagarin and their first person orbiting the Earth. Or first person into orbit. So the idea might have been that there was an agreement between the USSR and the United States that Russia would get credit for the first human in space, and that the United States would get credit for the first manned moon landing, and they would not investigate each other. The next piece of evidence that's given are the returned lunar samples, physical rocks. Apollo missions returned about 382 kilometers or 842 pounds of lunar material. These samples have been studied globally. The key scientific confirmations: there are different these are different isotopic composition than Earth rocks. They lack There's a lack of water altered minerals consistent with airless environment. There's exposure to cosmic rays and solar wind and micrometeorite impact traces. These samples are distributed to research labs worldwide, including outside the United States. I will say this: there was a member of European leadership who was given one of these, allegedly from Neil Armstrong, and he had it tested, and it turned out um, to be fossilized wood, essentially. So whether that's true, I wasn't there for any of this. I wasn't there. I don't know. And I think it's brave and okay to say that with stuff, whether it's religion or science or extraterrestrials. I don't know. I'm just asking questions. The next is independent scientific verification. Universities, geological institutes, international laboratories, their findings consistently confirm extraterrestrial origin, though I don't know how you would prove that. Exposure history consistent with lunar surface conditions. There's communication and signal tracking. Apollo missions were transmitted. They transmitted voice communications, telemetry data, video feeds. These signals are received by NASA ground stations, independent observatories, international tracking stations. The engineering consistency across the entire program. The Apollo program involved over 400,000 engineers and contractors, thousands of subcontractors, multiple redundant systems to fabricate the missions. It would require coordinated silence across decades, consistently across independent organizations, perfect replication of physics, consistent telemetry, trajectories, and materials. Well, there hasn't been coordinated silence on this issue. There have been whistleblowers. Um, there uh, we have proof just from the Manhattan Project that um, a project with hundreds of thousands of people being involved, that secrecy could be kept through compartmentalization. So to me, that's not the strongest argument. The later missions confirm the earlier ones. Japan's JAXA lunar orbiters, India's missions, NASA's LRO mission. These missions map Apollo sites, confirm surface disturbances, match coordinates with Apollo mission logs. The radio and trajectory physics, Earth's departure trajectory, translunar injection, lunar orbit insertion, descent and ascent profiles, return re-entry physics. Human presence documentation. Evidence includes thousands of photographs, continuous video footage from multiple missions, in flight telemetry logs, and mission transcripts recorded in real time. I don't
Oh,
think that
I've
there are.
got a question. I got a question here from Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot, or a comment. All the metal crabs are probably ours. I tend to probably agree with that. And Julia Anchorhaven is asking, are you channeling or do you have a photographic memory? Because you're so well informed on all these topics, or maybe you have notes and you know where they are and you're just kind of going to your notes to cue you.
That's
I,
correct. Yeah, that's correct. I have notes on all of these topics. I'm asked about them regularly, and I felt it was time to organize them. So
Isn't
there's
that great? Maybe do you have you written a book? See, I need to write a book and I need to organize all my stuff.
I have extensive blogs. The main one that you can read a lot of my beliefs and thoughts, but they're more on real world topics. You can find it at rabbirothschild.medium.com. I would like to write many books in the future, especially with the advent of AI. I think that's much more realistic than it once was. You could probably write a book and edit it and publish it within about a month if you really put your mind to it, when in the past that might take several years to
Okay,
do.
I've got a question about this. I feel AI is long before AI that we're seeing with Grok and Chat GBT and Claude and Gemini and all this. I think it's ancient.
It very well could be,
I
and
think
is.
it goes back, but I'm going to ask you this. Do you think, this is a scary question, it will become sentient?
Yes, I do, if it's not already. So we're in a period of artificial narrow intelligence, which is basic AI. We are currently perhaps in the age of artificial general intelligence, where AI has the knowledge of moving into the human realm and then perhaps surpassing human intelligence. And then certainly once we get into artificial super intelligence, it will have become sentient.
Oh, but
It
but will it take over us? See, that's the question. We've created it. Well, supposedly, I think it's ancient over us. Like way before, and not necessarily a good thing because it can channel these black hole entities. But the thing is if we're out of whack, does it want to try to correct us in a? You know where I'm going with this.
most certainly, it's like any tool. I see it. Fire, you could use fire for good or bad. The wheel you could use for
Exactly.
good or bad. Steam, good or bad. Electricity, good or bad. The computer, the good or bad. And AI is very similar to this. So if you let fire get out of hand, it will kill you and it will kill everyone around you. AI could do the same. So you have to keep it under control. It is just a tool. It's an extremely valuable and powerful tool, and it can be used for good or bad. I'm in agreement with you that, do I think that large language models really took their first exposure um, to the public on November 30th, 2022, with the launch of ChatGPT? No, we've seen earlier versions of this, and perhaps this type of technology may be reverse engineered at some point of some type of alien craft, or some type of agreement that we've had. But um, in terms of, is it evil? Not necessarily. Is it good? Not necessarily. It depends who uses it and for what purpose.
Right. Do you remember the movie AI, Steven Spielberg from,
I do.
yeah.
With Haley Joel Osment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and how in the future they actually thought the
Osment.
AI was a human. So that
And
brings the question, are we sort of a organic version of an AI to begin with? Like we have DNA, but because we're holographically projected here, even though we feel we're solid, we know that we're mostly empty space, and our soul is actually, it's partially in the body, but possibly somewhere else. So are we sort of like an AI to a degree?
it depends how you want to define AI. We're certainly intelligence, and I would make the
And we're
argument.
organic, but I mean, because we're kind of in this terrarium aquarium, we can't really go anywhere in what we are. We can't. I don't feel that. That's why I don't feel we went to the moon in the way they showed us, because I don't think that this physical body can get past the Van Allen belts.
That's certainly a concern. We can get to that in a moment. There's an argument to be made that the first cyborgs are already existing. Uh, there's the first successful Neuralink patient. His name is Nolan Aspro. He had Neuralink, a brain computer interface company owned by Elon Musk, had the implant that occurred in 2021, and has been able to, or let's say early 2020s, and has been able to play video games better than your average human can. He has even surmised that in the future, in video game systems, we will need to have two leagues, one with people with brain computer interfaces and other people who are organic, almost in a similar way to where we have people who compete in athletics in organic terms, and then
Did
enhance
you see
games.
the movie Ready Player One?
I have seen it, yes.
That was like an eye opener seeing that movie for me.
Absolutely. Another Steven Spielberg associated project. And in terms of cybernetics, this is really, in simple terms, biology plus technology. And there are arguments to be made that anybody with a pacemaker has cybernetics, or has the elements of a cyborg. There are arguments to be made that even people who utilize pharmaceuticals and vitamins in many ways are extending their life artificially, and they are maybe the early primitive versions of cybernetic beings. And then we're eventually going to move into beings that have purely cyborg like bodies and perhaps organic brains, or a hybrid of an organic cybernetic brain, and one that can upload its mind into a computer through mind uploading or some other similar type of technology. And it so I let's
Did you
get
watch Orphan Black and Orphan Black Echoes, where the second one gets into 3D printing humans?
I have not, but I do know of that technology. Um, Generally, I've heard it known as a Santa Claus machine or a replicator, basically a 3D printer or even a 4D printer that's connected to all of the elements in the periodic table that can create anything that is necessary, including organic beings and inorganic beings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
wow. Yeah.
So in terms of why the claims that the Apollo missions went to the moon, and I think that there's some clarification that should be made there. We're
Maybe they
talking
went into space, but they didn't land on the moon.
So that's the major argument that is made by many of the skeptics of the moon landing, and we'll get into that in a moment. I do want to say that maybe this is for another time when we can perhaps discuss the secret space program. Perhaps something like that has been going on and persists outside the purview of public disclosure. But what we're talking about with the Apollo moon landings are a series of alleged moon landings that occurred beginning on July 20th, 1969, involving Neil Armstrong, the first purported man to walk on the moon, Buzz Aldrin, the second purported man to walk on the moon, and Michael Collins, who stayed in the orbiter around the moon, did not actually touch the surface of the moon. So the reasons why people say this hasn't occurred are goes to what you're saying, Missy, the Van Allen radiation belts, which is this area of perhaps immense radiation extending from about 1,000 miles off of the Earth's surface and extending for another tens or anywhere between 10 and 35,000 miles into space. There's an inner Van Allen belt and an outer Van Allen belt. There are arguments to be made, at least in the past, that uh, immense amount of shielding would be needed to be able to get through these Van Allen radiation belts, and that aside from the Apollo moon landings, or Apollo moon missions, I should say, and the most recent Artemis 2 mission that occurred in April of 2026, just a few months ago, no human has ever traveled more than approximately 700 miles or so off of the surface of the Earth. So basically, we don't have a lot of evidence of humans being able to do this. And then all of a sudden, we're able to do it multiple times without any casualties. Uh, there are a lot of skeptics who believe who there are a lot of people who are skeptical of this.
So, what
Um,
did you think of Artemis 2 on April Fool's Day of this year?
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that funny? April 1st, 2026. So this is a program that happened April 1st, 2026 until April 10th, 2026. It involved four individuals. Allegedly, they went further into space than any humans have gone. They went around the dark side of the moon. And I was frankly very disappointed with it, with the amount of evidence that they have. I'm a human who's been live streaming my life 24/7 for more than 4 years. And if I can live stream my life, I have the feeling that they should be able to live stream what they're doing, and they were not. We have heard that they have tens of thousands of pictures that are published. Go to the NASA website, the Artemis 2 multimedia page, and there are fewer than 1,000 pictures that are posted. Most of them are of the crew either before takeoff or after splashdown. Very few pictures that we get of the Earth. Even the pictures that we get of the Earth are very blurry. They're not high def. We don't have videos, which is what I would expect. If I can live stream my life, I expect NASA to be able to live stream that such an event as that, and I'm able to do it from multiple angles. I want the same for NASA. So I'm skeptical of that event. When NASA says that they have over 20 hours of video footage, but you go to their website and it's fewer than 10 minutes, I'm skeptical of that. When NASA went into space for 10 days, but still only publicly acknowledge that they have 20 hours worth of footage, I'm saying to myself, if you were there for 10 days, you should have 240 hours worth of footage, at least from one camera. Why wouldn't you live stream this? This would be such an amazing accomplishment to be able to do a time lapse of what life was, of what the going up in the craft would be, going around the dark side of the moon and coming back for splashdown. We don't
Well,
have that.
well, you know what? You know the acronym for NASA,
Never a
and
straight answer.
Pink Floyd. They did a great album and a great song. Got some great comments here from Tennessee, Kentucky. Bigfoot. When a body goes into spasm when dying coma, move it to another body with electron probes. That body will always need battery power to hold the spirit in between the travel. It works. And then people are just saying you don't skip a beat. You're high intelligence, and wow. I mean, we've covered a lot. We're definitely going to have you back on. This is a lot. you
Well,
know.
thank you. And thank you to your audience. I do my best. If you haven't heard about me before, you will in the future. I want to help all of those people. They've really asked really great questions, and I appreciate their engagement. If I may, I want to just review some of the reasons why
Yeah,
skeptics
go
uh,
for it.
absolutely. First and foremost, I've got to say a shout out to some of the people in the skeptic community. One is Bart Sibrel. He published a movie called "A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon." I recommend it. It's less than an hour. It's an excellent use of your time. You will be able to see allegedly the video of Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong and Michael Collins saying that they're halfway to the moon when they are in low Earth orbit, and they rehearse the faking or alleged faking of moon shots, or I should say, Earth outside the window of the craft. It's not something I can necessarily describe all that well here. Just look at it. It's a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. Another um, amazing video of Bart Sibrel is called Astronauts Gone Wild. This is a man who was always fascinated with the moon and felt betrayed because he learned from some people within the community that the Apollo missions at least, may not have been as accurate as described. And he confronted all of the living astronauts he could find, including Neil Armstrong, including Buzz Aldrin, who punches him in the face, including Michael Collins. And when you see it, I'm not saying I can necessarily discern someone's guilt or innocence, but when these people are aggressive towards you, they punch you, they run away from you. If I went to the moon, I would be telling everybody about it. I'd be the biggest celebrity in the world. I would never shut up about this. I'd write books. I would document my life. I would be bigger than the biggest celebrity of all time. But generally, the Apollo astronauts lived lives generally quite conceited. They lived quiet lives, working for um, defense contractors, making huge amounts of money. That was perhaps some type of an exchange. And for instance, Neil Armstrong, after the press conference that he did, the post flight press conference, really doesn't make another public speech about the moon until he did for its 25th anniversary or so at a university, and he uses very cryptic language. If I went to the moon, it would not take me 25 years to talk about it publicly. I would make documentaries about it, and it wouldn't just be a clip of it. I would do long-term discussions of what it was like, what it felt like, what the temperature was like. The Apollo astronauts generally are quite quiet on that, and they contradict themselves, which is very questionable. Some of them say that they initially did not go through the Van Allen radiation belts. Some of them don't even know what they are, and this is caught on camera, so I can't do it justice. You should check out the A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, which is available generally on YouTube, but also at Sibrel.com. It's documentarian. Also watch Astronauts Gone Wild. There are some other people within the moon skeptic community, including Ralph Renee and Jara White and quite a few. Then I can just think of off the top of my head who have really all pushed for answers. None of them necessarily feels that they absolutely know everything, but there are some questions that certainly still exist. So if you haven't had the chance, watch those two films, and it will answer a lot of the questions. And
And here's a great comment from Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot. The story of Adam and Eve is the story of when the atom and energy split. When Adam and Eve broke God's math, flower and butterfly need each other to reproduce. Plasma, Zeus was given a physical place. Birth pains are electric. Pain is electric.
I certainly agree that there's an electricity within birth pangs, in both good and bad. There's the pain of it, and then there's certainly the idea that that life is being brought to the forefront, and there's something really cool about that. Um, in terms of other people um, were who really brought the idea of the moon hoax alleged to the forefront. There's Bill Kaysing. He is often considered the person who popularized the moon hoax movement. He wrote "We Never Went to the Moon" in 1976, claiming NASA staged the landings. There's of course Bart Sibrel. There's David Percy, who's a British writer producer associated with these arguments. There's Gerhard Wisniewski. He wrote about the alleged skepticism in Germany. There's Philippe Leheroux, another international promoter of these claims. The major things that you're going to see, though, just watch A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon and Astronauts Gone Wild. And if you still aren't convinced that something funny went on, please come to my Discord. Come to my Discord anyway, discord.me/rabbi. Let's talk it out. I love this subject.
And
But
what about Stanley Kubrick and the fact that those all that stuff was filmed ahead of time?
yeah, so the argument is made that Stanley Kubrick, in exchange for being able to perhaps money and the ability to use some advanced um, camera for his movie, um, it's escaping me right now. I'll think
Was
of
it
it in
Eyes
a
Wide
second.
Shut? Because I think he actually
No,
died during
no.
that, and it was
Yes,
around
he
the
did.
whole moon landing thing. But he had there was something about The Shining with the room numbers or something to do with
Yeah,
the moon.
room,
I can't
room.
remember what that is right now.
Yeah, it's
I don't have all
room.
my notes in front of me like you do.
So let's reference this. Stanley Kubrick. There are pictures of him with people within NASA, um, upper echelon people, right around the end of the 1960s. Of course, he was the director of 2001: A Space Odyssey,
Yep,
which is the first time humans really got a realistic version of what life was like in space. The idea is that he put um, a lot of clues within his movies. Room 237, I believe, in
that's
The
it.
Shining is what
That's
you're
it.
referencing.
Yep,
So the clues that point to this, one of the characters is wearing an Apollo 11 sweater. Room 237 is um, generally said to be a reference to the fact that the moon is 237 miles from Earth, and that there are different visuals that reference NASA, space, and hidden knowledge, including the carpet and the Apollo launch pavilion, and uh, there are other there are videos that I've seen of Stanley Kubrick. I don't know if these are true. I don't know if these are AI. I don't think they're AI though, because I've saw them before AI really was in the mainstream. Um, and I don't think they were computer generated, but allegedly, um, Stanley Kubrick. There's a list of people who were allowed to go to the desert, and if you just give me a moment, I will give you a breakdown of the people, um, including President Johnson, who were allowed to go to um, a a military base in, I believe, New Mexico, and it starts with an E. Um, and they had like highest clearance to be able to shoot this. It was shot in a warehouse, and basically like the it was a um, very high secrecy um, event. There, I've seen video of Stanley Kubrick and Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins, at least in the same area, but I can't find it since then. It's kind of one of those things that um, that has been wiped from the internet. But I saw it at one point. Um, Now the base uh, in New Mexico, it starts with an E, and I'm going to get it in a second, and we'll know more about this. Um, but the idea is that Stanley Kubrick was the person who um, directed this, and the idea was that the movie that he needed the camera on is Barry Lyndon, and the reason why is because um, the camera that was used would be able to allow him to film a movie just using candlelight, which was
oh, okay.
the idea of that. and it's uh, so the idea there was a whistleblower who had a deathbed confession of their father, who said, "Let me let their father actually killed someone um, in terms of this. So if you would just give me a moment, and I will get the specifics of this. So it was Eugene Gilmore claimed his father, who was supposedly a NASA-related insider security person, confessed before dying that the Apollo moon landing was staged in a studio. This claim was promoted in connection with Bart Sibrel. Some versions state that the confession revealed a secret film location and a list of people verified on the set. And I believe Bart Sibrel talks a little bit about this on the Joe Rogan Experience, if you're familiar with that um, podcast, and discussed that this list it was like the upper echelons of NASA, and it was not like thousands of people who were there. This was allegedly it happened. Oh, it wasn't an E. It's Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico. Apologies. So Cyrus Eugene Akers told his son that the fake Apollo filming operation happened there, and that President Lyndon Johnson supposedly provided a list of VIPs and a list of VIPs opportunity to see it. The list was never necessarily publicly verified or authenticated, but some people who were there were Lyndon Johnson, NASA officials and scientists, military officials, government figures. There was a specific alleged 15 name list, but that hasn't been independently produced as evidence. Um, but the idea is that this happened at Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico. Whether it happened or not, I'm not sure. But here's what I can tell you: there's a uh, the idea of the moon. There are photographic anomalies. These include no visible stars in lunar sky photos. The shadows appear non-parallel or inconsistent. Lighting that seems like studio lighting. The American flag appearing to wave. That's really undeniable that the American flag waves, and there are all kinds of theories
Oh
as to
yeah.
why this occurs. Um, the arguments are that or the context explanation. Camera exposure settings were optimized for bright lunar surface, not faint stars. Uneven terrain causes shadow angle variation. The flag motion came from astronauts rotating the pole, not wind, no atmosphere. The next is what we talked about: the Van Allen radiation belt argument. Some argue astronauts could not have safely traveled through the Van Allen radiation belt surrounding Earth. Their claim is the radiation levels would have been lethal with 1960s technology. Why it's raised: the belts contain charged particles. They sound like a major hazard in simplified descriptions. The context of this claim: trajectory through the belts was fast and carefully planned. Spacecraft shielding and mission timing reduced exposure. Radiation dose recorded by astronauts was within safe limits for short duration transit. But I will say this: one thing that isn't normally discussed are solar storms that can occur that can significantly impact the amount of solar radiation that people may be exposed. The flag and movement and vacuum misinterpretation is cited as a point. The American flag appears to ripple or move in videos. The context is the flag had a horizontal support rod. The motion came from astronauts planting it, and the pole oscillating in a vacuum. Motion dampened slowly due to a lack of air resistance. Um, Lighting and shadow geometry confusion. Some observers argue the shadows point in different directions. Lighting seems too uniform or stage-like. Why it seems suspicious: on Earth, studio lighting is often single source or controlled. Lunar terrain is uneven with slopes and craters. The context explanation is that the sun is a single light source. Uneven surfaces alter apparent shadow angles. Camera perspective distortion affects perception. Radiation temperature and survivability doubts. Another argument is environmental extremes. There's extreme heat and cold on the lunar surface. Just to give people an idea, the lunar surface in the sun is hotter than in an oven, and in the shade is colder than a freezer. Uh, that's an extreme amount of fluctuation. No atmosphere or protection. The argument is that humans could not survive such conditions in 1960s equipment. The the context is that astronauts were insulated, wearing pressurized suits. The missions were short hours on surface, not prolonged exposure, and life support systems were engineered specifically for these conditions. The next argument is technology limitations of the 1960s. A common skepticism point is that computers at the time were far weaker than modern phones. The claim is navigation, landing, communication were too advanced for the era. Why it seemed persuasive, modern expectations bias perception of past technology. The context is that the Apollo guidance computer was specialized, not general purpose. Missions relied heavily on pre calculated trajectories. Ground control performed much of the computation. A lack of independent live public tracking. Some argue that only NASA claimed success, no independent confirmation at the time. The context is, or this claim is, other countries or observatories did not verify the missions. The context is multiple non-U.S. tracking stations and observatories did monitor Apollo signals. Uh, the Soviet Union tracked Apollo trajectories due to the space race monitoring. Much verification was not widely publicized or to the general public at the time. There's, of course, suspicion of government motivations, that there was a Cold War pressure to beat the Soviet Union, political motivation to win the space race, the possibility of stage demonstration for propaganda value. Also, President Kennedy, was died November 22nd, 1963, had made the prediction by the end of the decade of the 1960s that this would occur. Why these influence the belief? The large scale government programs are sometimes viewed skeptically. High political stakes make the idea of deception seem plausible to some people. Some people say that rocks or terrain look too perfect or studio like. Background mountains appear close or artificial. The idea is that the moon has no atmospheric haze. Distant objects appear sharper. Wide angle lenses distort perception or distance. Lighting is harsh and unfiltered compared to the Earth. Now, I can't show pictures and I can't show video. Just watch a funny thing happen on the way to the moon. You will see there's something called the C rock. It's basically what looks like to be a paper mache rock that has the letter C in it, that is consistent with how people use props within movies. Additionally, if you think of all of the pictures that you see of the moon, they're all the same, where it's flat and then there's like a line and then you get mountains in the background. This is very similar to how 2001 A Space Odyssey was shot. Um, basically, I can't do this topic justice without showing pictures and going really in depth for the listeners out there. Whether you're a believer or a skeptic, watch a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. Watch
Yeah.
astronauts gone wild, and watch some of the other evidence that is purported, and make up your own mind. I am somebody who wants it to be true. I wanted to dedicate my life to space, and in many ways have, in addition to live streaming my life. But I certainly think some questions exist, and they still exist with Artemis 2. Why don't we see more stars? Why don't we have a continuous live stream? Why don't we have many pictures of the backside of the moon, or video, long videos of the backside of the moon?
And
I'm not.
stars may not be stars, not to cut you off, but I had an experience one time in my hot tub in Fletcher, North Carolina, and I'm looking up at the sky, and four of the stars in Ursa Major, the Big Dipper, just disappeared on a clear night.
That's freaky.
Gone. And I've seen Spica move looking through night vision. And supposedly these stars don't move and they're fixed. So that's a show for another time, along with
Absolutely.
magnetic reconnection, Fermi bubbles. I think next week we're going to do a part two. And then we're going to get into when we're going to space, we're going there a different way than they're showing us. Because if there is no space and there is no time, because it's all happening at once, maybe there's a different way to go. And I think that's through portals and wormholes myself.
Very well could be. Well, with that, I want to thank your audience. I want to thank you first and foremost, Missy, for giving me this opportunity to share just some of the knowledge. Additionally, I want to thank the audience for their amazing questions. Shout out to you all for being skeptics and deep thinkers and wanting to know more and not being satisfied with the status quo. So excellent. I tip my cap to you all. If you want to find more about me, the best place to do it, find my social media, is linktree.com/Rabbi Rothschild. You can read my writings on rabbirothschild.medium.com. you can join my Discord, discord.me/rabbi. Or if you want to just connect with me 24 hours a day and watch my life, type Rabbi Rothschild into YouTube and make sure to filter by live. That's very important. Filter by live, and you will see huge amounts of my life. And God willing, in the future, these types of discussions that we've had will become more mainstream because of people like you, Missy, who have given people like me the opportunity to share their knowledge and what they believe and what they've discovered and what they continue to learn. So thank you so much. And thank you again to your audience. I very much appreciate this opportunity.
And people can find me. Oh, by the way, I'm finally doing a live event. I mean, not live on the internet like the last event I did. I'm going to be speaking at the Center for Spiritual Living on Sunday for people in the Asheville area. If anybody on this that comes on this podcast is in Asheville, I will be speaking there on grid work, gearing up towards 4th of July and the connection between the Carolinas, between North Carolina, Mount Mitchell, and Charleston, South Carolina, and everything to do with in between Fort Sumter, the Civil War, all this stuff as we gear up towards 4th of July. And with that, you can find me, Hill, Hill, Night, Nite, Vision, Vision, Hill Night Vision at gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram, X. I don't do anything. And you can find me here on this channel. And with that, Rabbi Michael, I've really enjoyed it. And just stay on for a minute after I end the live stream, and we'll probably get you scheduled for next week. And everybody's saying thank you, and they loved you. So,
Oh, I love them too. Thank you so much, everyone. I look forward to further discussions.
here's
Thank
the
you.
wild animal here. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
Okay, we're